West. Whoop.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. We're live.
All right, we're going live right now. It's loading. We are live.
Fantastic. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Counterpoint here on our channel, Piercing the Veil. Well, we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. I'm James Comey. No, I'm not. I'm Chuck. I'm Chuck Schumer. No, actually, I am Texas Patriot. And next person.
I'm West. I think you guys will remember me. I'm welcome, and I can't wait to get this stream going.
And I'm Kaz, and I'm excited to be part of this great bunch of people. And we've got lots of info for us to share with you. Can't wait.
And I am Mad Hatter. Y'all may know me as well. And we are going to have an awesome channel here. It's going to be a collaborative effort. And we are going to get information.
Tennessee, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, guys. I'm Tennessee Homesteader. TN Homesteader is the screen name. As you may have guessed, I'm from Tennessee, and like to be a member of the team.
Okay, so who would like to open up talking? Okay, I will. I'm not bashful. One of the things, this is Tex here, and one of the things we found really interesting is the Mulvaney promotion to for us here. He got the chief of staff position, but Tennessee and I were talking. We noticed that he did not give up the OMB job. Now, I guess if you work 24 hours a day, you could probably do both. But I have a feeling what they're doing is they're avoiding a Senate confirmation hearing, which would have to take place until after the new Congress is put in place. So what they'll do is that either Mulvaney will stay, or he will leave, or he'll go back to OMB and they'll bring someone else in. So we can look for a bit of a surprise there and see what happens. But I guess that's going to be what's his name is also in line for that. So. Anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there. Next.
What you got, West?
So on that front, what do you think? Because it's interesting to have the combination of chief of staff and OMB, right?
I do, and I'll tell you what's happening is that I also think, the OMB encompasses that Regulations Bureau that was set up with Elizabeth Warren. And I think that he knows where the bodies are buried on that. So it wouldn't surprise me to see him or see that in the future become a part of the attack. And on top of that is that you've got, what's his name that I forget his name for the moment, but he's also in line to come into the operations. So it's just interesting. I find that, with the hearings the other day where Huber did not attend,
Right.
The string really got pulled. Is that this is the unraveling of the foundation, the networks, and what's going to happen is I think we're going to see repeatedly. It's like a spider web. Is that there's tentacles to Hollywood, there's tentacles to Borders, Soros. I mean, all kinds of people are going to be out there. And I think we're going to see it around the horn start to flow. And should be pretty interesting, I guess is what I say.
Could I just interrupt and say I'm on the screen the whole time. I can't see anything else. I can't see when you guys are talking. It's only on me. I think it's because I'm the only one that's got the live cam.
Okay, try that now.
Oh, yeah, I'll just see if it comes through. I can see in the Zoom room, I can see you guys, I can see it coming up, but all I can see when I'm looking at the screen live is me.
You mean on the YouTube side?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'll do is I will just turn my camera off and see what happens.
Right. What do you see, Kaz?
Now it's gone to you, Mad Hatter. Yeah, for some reason, because I'm the only one live screen.
Yeah, it's the only one. That's the only one sending out extreme. The rest of us are.
Well, it's supposed to switch to the icons because I've got the active speaker view, and so that's what's supposed to be on YouTube.
Okay, well, let's leave it this way for now, and we can check it and see how it prints. That way, Kaz doesn't feel
the
camera shy.
Yeah, it's kind of like I can't scratch myself without everybody looking at me.
Hey, Kaz, you said there's a lot of things going on with the Clinton Foundation down in Australia. A lot of ties down there.
A lot of things have in the past gone down, and it's all linked together with all our traders. But if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to go back to what happened at that hearing. I absolutely loved every second of both of those hearings on your Thursday last week, because as far as I was concerned, it was setting the stage so that they could offload those 6,000 documents.
Right.
Legally.
I am so glad to hear somebody that's completely detached, if you may, from the 50 or the lower 48 actually recognize the show that it was.
Oh my goodness. It was the best show I've watched in a long, long time. And it had a part 1 and a part 2. Yes,
exactly. The Fitton side was a little bit dullish, if you may, but you have to pick the pearls out of that one, like the discovery of the Clinton email server, and being available to the FOIA. But the second half,
you knew it was performance art when Doyle and the other guy got up, and Moynihan, I think his name was, and Moynihan, I think, made the comment that you invited us.
Yes.
And I thought that was such a great dig. And Meadows, I truly believe, was just the actor, is that he was playing indignant, playing upset because he wanted everybody to get going. The interesting thing for me is now the IRS is incriminated.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. That just slipped in nicely, and if you, and I have been all year following Charles Ortel, and now he tells it the best. Like, he's been screaming it to the rooftops. He's also connected with this gentleman from Australia, Michael Smith, who has they've been collaborating information, and just listening to him, he just keeps putting out the information. It's always been, because Charles is essentially an economist as well, and I was even listening to him this morning on my walk. He must be getting very excited about all of this. But the biggest thing that I'm finding that people are not talking about, and they did a little bit in the hearings, but they were acting as foreign agents for foreign countries. And that is just for a foundation that was only meant to ever be a presidential library. They have been breaking the law in multiple versions of their global initiative, Clinton Global Initiative, and also the CHI, and then of course it's also the IRS. I mean, just that will put them in jail. Just those, all of those things linked together will put them in jail.
Yeah, in fact, the whole Clinton server answer, she responded back, she did it for convenience. The truth is that it wouldn't fall under the FOIA Act, was what she was doing, is that it was separate information. They're able to destroy what they wanted, or so they thought, if she would win. And now we know, what's going to happen here. There is so much coming forward. I mean, this is going to unravel the string. I mean, it's interesting. Cass, let me ask you a question. What's the thought of us releasing the D class in Australia? Has that become a conversation, or because when it does, it implicates the Australians with our CIA and Obama and Clinton. Have you heard anything down there?
Traitors. I've got a as I was telling you guys the other day, I have got a 4-part presentation that I'm up to, I think about 2.5, I think, elsewhere, and it outlines all of the traitors that were involved that we know of. So it's always your top people, you know, your prime ministers and your foreign ministers, and but it goes back. CIA and Australia go. I've just found another ripper one. I have so much stuff that we've been completely and utterly run by the US military and the CIA since, I think, probably the day we became a country.
Now, let me ask you.
That might sound like a shock, but it's true.
Is that being put out in the press, or is the press trying to be mainstream media down there? How is that?
Our press is the bought and paid for press that are controlled by the Illuminati / cabal / New World Order, just like everywhere else in the world.
Gotcha.
So what this all, when you gather all this information, you guys are great researchers. Oh my goodness. I've just done my own research, and I research, and most of the time I find the best researchers. Do you know what I mean? You find these people that have been writing about this stuff for years and years and years and years, and no one's been listening. And then when you can get it together and link it all, you're suddenly going, oh my goodness. Then you throw in Agenda 21, you throw in financial tyranny, and then, Agenda 21, and then you go back to the formation of the Illuminati in 1776, the same year as the United States was independence. Is that correct? 1776?
Correct.
Yes.
Yep. So we've had no chance. None of us have had a chance. So they all link together, but our traders, they're not going to, they control our news media as well. And we've only got 25 million people, mind you. We could probably fit into one of your cities. But we're spread out everywhere, but we're not stupid. But when we have all that kind of information withheld from us, our constitution was taken out of our schools in 1975. And that was a year the CIA toppled one of our prime ministers because he was going to expose the fact that Pine Gap was being run by the CIA and the US military. He was quickly disposed of. He wasn't killed, but he was removed.
Interesting.
And so look, hey, ask me anything you like. And of course, it is imperative that they get brought down.
Now, you've also got the other side of this whole conversation, which is the human trafficking, or the other subjects that fall under it, with the recent court case that took place with the Cardinal, I believe it was.
Yeah. I don't know about the human trafficking side with him. Pell was charged, as we all know. I don't see any reason. I don't feel like I have to suppress anything. I'm on a US Zoom site, streaming through a US YouTube channel. I'm going to say whatever I want about Cardinal Pell. But not only that, it's not just the him not doing anything about all of the pedophiles in the Catholic Church in this country. It's also about money laundering. This case in Australia isn't. They wouldn't even dare talk about that. But I think you all know, being the treasurer of the Vatican, there's an awful lot of stuff to confess to the Pope there, isn't there?
Absolutely.
Well, the Pope already knows, but you know what I mean. He is the treasurer, or was, of the Vatican.
Right.
And then we come into the dirty, rotten banksters.
He was in charge of a lot of money. And I'm just wondering how much he just pocketed or put aside for himself. So you know there was money laundering.
I think the big shock is that how much wealth was taken from the world economy to specific, the specific network. It's going to be devastating. I mean, it is absolutely going to be, it's going to knock us over when we realize that. And we talk about a reset coming up, and there's been talk of going back to a gold standard in the issue with our Fed. And Trump's really doing a great job of setting them up. Is that he's put it where, basically we're showing the economy as good, but we know it's not. But he's acting like it's good, and he's blaming it on our Fed. And with the recent talk by, or the recent comment by Q, saying that there is, we have gold, and I dug into that a little deeper for us, and it's very interesting that I found this out because. If you go into the Grand Canyon, you can fly by the Grand Canyon, but you're not allowed to enter it by law. And they're saying that the gold is there. And that's how we're going to be able to reclaim wealth through gold and, strike back at all the people that have been storing it for so long. But anyway.
A lot of the Indian reservations too apparently hold bases underneath them and all kinds of little cities and the gold. Hey, my YouTube channel, did the financial tyranny. I don't know if you listen to that, Patty, but there's well over 10 hours, probably more, probably about 20 hours explaining the whole kit and caboodle about the financial tyranny and what the banks and what they did with the Bretton Woods agreement and everything, right to where the gold's hidden, the gold bonds. That's the most interesting part because that's where a lot of people have gotten killed trying to cash them in. And we're talking about multiple thousands of trillions of dollars worth of gold.
It's
bonds.
Just unimaginable how much
it is.
Well, and the funny part is the Fed and all these government banks is the fact that they, it's one thing to talk about fractional lending, where they only have to keep X amount within their own banks for the standard banks. But to think that the Fed is actually just saying, okay, you can print money and here's your loan and we're going to charge you interest. And they have no investment. I mean, they have no money. And it's going to really shock the world when they see what the Fed's been doing and what other Feds are doing around the world. So
the central banking system, period. Right. The Fed is an arm of it.
Well, you know a lot about it.
Well, there was a couple of synergies in the discussion so far, particularly with the Vatican's financing, because when you look at it from a hierarchical point of view, what's the difference between that aspect and the CFPB, which is what Mulvaney was put into and everybody fought, right? The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which gave money, and it was effectively a slush fund without any oversight. And how much money went through that and where did it go?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, look.
How much funding?
Stories.
Sorry, go ahead, Kath.
With what they've gotten away with their own little banking world. And by the way, with all these agreements that that they put in place, that they were never able to be taxed on them, and there was no government on the earth that was going to be able to prosecute them for anything. Like they made their own rules as if we are immune to everything and they can't touch us. Well, I think they've got a pretty big, decent black eye coming, or maybe two.
Definitely. I mean, if the Fed's doings can be disclosed, or as Ron Paul had been after for so many years, audited. Granted that I remember a discussion, what does it mean if it's audited? What's the big deal? Just shut it down. It's like, no, you have to disclose. You have to disclose what they've been doing, then shut it down. If you shut it down and there's chaos, which there would be, it would just be totally misunderstood by the people that would be mostly affected, right? The same concept as, look at what's going on, and not to digress, but I'm using it as an example. Look at the discussion now with Obamacare. Granted, Kaz, that this may not be within your wheelhouse, but the recent announcement declaring that that is now basically unconstitutional because the mandate has been removed, and okay, the world is falling now. Everybody's going to be dying on the streets, right? Because they don't have Obamacare. Same kind of concept.
What I'm more are thinking about on this is all the penalties that those people had to pay
right.
for Obamacare. And we knew it was unconstitutional then, and we know it's unconstitutional now. Well, are they going to get their money back?
No, they really won't. What should happen, though, is that if you look at it, we hopefully will have a soft landing crash. So we go into recession around February through May. And then we take over, the Treasury takes over, the printing of money, and there's no more interest charged. So what's going to happen is when you look at the debt clocks for your countries, is that interest charge is going to go away. And when that goes away, boom, that's funds going right back into the government, which goes right back to the people and allows us to change things like the IRS and how they tax. I mean, there's so many things that are going to fly over the next, we won't even know the order because there's so many things that are going to go. Is that once you kill the Fed, you have a recession, but then all of a sudden when you stop having to pay interest, all of a sudden that jumps the economy. And obviously everything will boom back for that. The key part is that February through 4 months, 6 month period is that some small businesses will be hurt. There'll be challenges to, I think you'll see a lot of debt forgiveness kind of things. There may be kind of a setup with a law with that. Simply because we'll be under a stress period, something along the lines of kind of granting, I don't know, how would you describe it, Tennessee? Kind of a forgiving period?
There'll be a grace period of some sort, I would presume. And the thing that has to, just like it was argued, if you may, for the tax cuts that were just recently implemented, the loss of revenue and stuff like that, and then they don't recognize the gain in revenue coming in, because even though you have a lower tax rate, you're actually getting more dollars, and it doesn't matter what the percentage is, it's the number of dollars. Same concept is going to be here, I believe, in the aspect of a potential some form of grace. I don't know what it's going to be like. I could tell you that in my perspective is that there'll be turmoil. Some are going to lose. Some of them are going to have pain. In the long run, it's going to come out in the wash, because let's say that you are losing on one side, but if the taxes collected go away, or the burden on the business to have to manage tax collection goes away, that's a gain. The interesting thing is going to be how the states end up handling it, because we're talking about federal. The states then come in second, right, and right behind that. And if I may ask one question, and then I'll toss it back at Cass. We were talking, and not to digress, but something popped into my head when we were talking about the hearing, the oversight hearing, and the exposure that the IRS had been around, right, had these documents. Just for my own recollection, did he not say that they had given them to the IRS about 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nothing was done about it.
Who was on point for the IRS at that point?
Lois Lerner.
No, Koskinen.
Who?
Koskinen, the guy that almost got impeached out of the IRS. He was the head of the IRS, and Lois Lerner was an underling, but he was head of the IRS from 2013 to 2017. So he was there right after Lerner did her thing on the 2012 election. But
he was the guy that really politicized the IRS.
Exactly. So if they turn it over to the IRS, and they say about 2 years ago, there may be an equation that it was under Trump's watch, but I don't know the exact timing thereof. He was removed from the IRS on November 9th, 2017.
Okay.
So if they did, give or take, let's say, if they really did it about 2 years ago, it was under his banner, and I wouldn't be all too surprised that it got buried.
Just to make an announcement, we also have Misty Meaner, and Misty is joining us. And if you catch the pun in the name, you'll know that her background is legal issues. So, hi, Misty, if you can hear us.
Hi, Misty.
Hello. How are you?
Hello, Misty.
Hello, Misty.
All good.
Okay, Cass, I cut you off.
Oh, no. I just get all excited about this particular topic plus the financial tyranny. And I was listening to what you guys were saying about the banks. And you've got to remember all the feds that you do have in the USA and all the banks, all the privately owned banks answer to all of these feds. So it's all the same people. From the info that I've gathered, it's really not going to be as bad as everybody thinks. There will be a short period of time, very short period of time where it'll be a bit confusing. There's a lot of people working on, I don't know if you've looked into the NISARA and GSARA. A lot of people try to debunk that. I believe that was actually set to go in the year 2001 when little Georgie Bush took over, but he reneged on it. And that was a plan to have a really nice, easygoing reset. Not only NISARA is the USA, which was the national one, and GSARA was the global one, where a lot of the debt would be forgiven, etc. And it was quite an extensive document. I've also got videos on that. But having said that, there's also other sources like, and I don't know, and quite frankly, I'm past caring what people say when I say Benjamin Fulford's been on this thing for maybe 20 years, talking about the white dragons and the Asian. Most of the gold in the world is in Asia. That is absolute fact. And it's being protected, but it's all on the ledger, apparently, with the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements, because they've got to watch it closely because they've issued all these countries, they've taken all these countries' gold and issued them with gold certificates. So the only thing is you can't, it's like the Hotel California, you can check in, but you can't check out. So you can check your gold in, but you can't check it out. Right. So
and China's been hoarding it for eons.
Yes. And also the fact that they are sitting on it as well, like not literally already mined gold. They're sitting on a lot of unmined gold as well. The thing is, the gold itself, basically, the gist of it is the gold itself, it will become the base. It's not going to be precious to anyone. So in other words, don't go out and buy gold because it's not your gold that you buy that it's going to be based on. It's the actual trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. And I'm doing little inverted commas with my fingers that are being held. So then everything will be attached to that gold base. And basically each country will take over its own finances like they used to. You know, I hate to keep saying I've got videos on it, but I have. You know, there's a man in Australia called Larry Harrigan who's been working on this stuff for years and years and years. I've done a couple of his videos. I narrate them. It's other people's research, but I narrate them. He wrote The Earth Plus 5%. It's amazing. It's almost like a little fairy tale story, and then at the end he goes, if you think this is a joke, it's not. It's how they all got us to be debt slaves by adding the bankers, the Rothschilds, etc., added interest to our governments in particular to pay them for printing money out of thin air.
Right.
Okay, so they were basically the money printers, and that's all they did, but they were charging this massive interest, but they weren't creating new money with it. So the example was $100. $100 plus nothing is $100. So what happens when you've got $100 plus 5%? $105 does not equal $100. So that's where it all started. But also one of the really fine points they make, and a lot of people miss this, and I always miss it until I've been following the money, so to speak. the world doesn't stop because the money system stops. There's still people who can do the work. There's still resources that we can use to make
they just moved
make
to
things.
another. They just moved to another commodity or an actual commodity as the basis.
So we don't stop.
Also go into a barter system.
Right.
Well,
yeah, that's the point
for
of
a
the
short time. For a short time until the rest gets until the shock. Oh, here we go. We're back with the videos.
No,
You
that
know-
was
you know-
that was
you know,
Milkmaid
it's-
joined us, and then that's where it went. Milkmaid, just as a heads up, Cass was the only one airing video, and therefore she was the only one coming out on the stream.
So you might want to go to your icon.
Right, and that's what Milkmaid has done. So stay at your icon level for this go around, Milkmaid.
Sorry
Okay,
about
so-
that interruption.
So if I could throw 2 cents worth in here, we're talking about bartering and what that really means. Bartering means that we create wealth. What happened with Rothschilds and the Feds and then and the national banks is that they didn't create wealth. We said we need money, and they would take our same large pizza, and it was sliced into 8 pieces, and they slice it into 12 and say, "Oh, you've got 12 pieces now," but it was the same pizza. And what it was taking money out of our system over and over again. And it's really a tedious topic, so I won't get into it here. But
They
if
don't
you
put it back in. They don't put it back in.
never, they're not contributors; they're takers.
Exactly.
It's truly the money changers kind of scenario. Is that they're just charging you a fee so you can go pay taxes to Caesar. And what people don't realize is that when we get to, and this is Keynesian economics versus Austrian economics, is Keynesian has this other view of the cash is the issue, and Austrian economics says you have to create wealth. And that's what we've been doing all this time. That's why people work 12 hours a day. That's why we come home and are exhausted. But we weren't getting credit for what we worked for. We were creating wealth, and it was being siphoned from us. In Austrian economics, and we can call it bartering, but creating wealth is what we've done for 200 years. And that's we're going to find out when we get off the Fed system is that, whoa, we've got a lot of money in this country. We've got a lot of wealth. We've got a lot of product. And if we call it bartering, that's just creating wealth. And, it's interesting. It's a very untranslatable thing. It's outside the English language. We're very unique about the term of creating wealth. It doesn't translate quite the same in other languages. It just doesn't work quite the same way. But that's what it's all about. Go ahead. Someone's going to.
Spot on.
I was going to say at least Caesar built roads.
Yeah.
that doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I had a good army too.
Yeah. I mean, he did have had an empire to maintain, but I mean, the roads are still there. They're still in use today. So it's like I'm being facetious, of course, but I'm saying that compared to the Fed, at least he produced something.
Yeah. No,
I think this is that's almost like a dedicated topic, right? The concept of the hypothetical, pseudo hypothetical. The Fed is brought down. How and what happens next, right? Kind of like that line of discussion, because it's the gold standard, silver standard. Who's gold? What's because presumably the prices of both gold and silver are kind of suppressed today, but under the concept of it becoming, let's say, the backing commodity for respective countries' wealth, well, it'll stabilize, but at what level? Higher than it is today? Lower than it is today? Same as it is today? That kind of speculation, if you may. Obviously not from an advice point of view to the listeners. It's more or less from our hypothetical path forward, right?
That's right. Mad Hatter or Misty, anything you want to throw in there? Silence is golden.
Well, I have one, if I may.
Please do.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be so quiet. I'm actually on with Zoom trying to get our little technical issues fixed. So I'm just here in the background for right now.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Matt. So, I was looking at some Q posts, not some of the, well, some of the old ones and some of the new ones, more recent ones, I should say, not new ones, because the latest was the Q&A. The one that struck me is, and some of you may have heard me say that before, that 2555 was a direct message to Nancy Pelosi, 2555 and 2551. And out of that came an interesting date, January 19th, 2019. And that takes us back to, I believe it was Q Post 652 that had an interesting little tidbit. It had, remember this day, which was very interesting because the remember this day, not date, day, that Q post was dropped on January 19th, 2018. The timestamp on that guy was 4:02 in the 12-hour clock, 4:02:49. You sum up those digits, it equals 19. So
what number was that?
that was Q 652. I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. 562, Cass. 562. I'm being dyslexic.
You want me to bring it up?
Yeah, sure. And I'm going to go numerology on you guys for a second.
I know, I love it. I was going to say,
yeah.
I heard your decode on the DeFi funeral. That was awesome. I was just blown away. That was awesome.
So that was
a video popped up yesterday though. They kind of blew my theory away because there's a fifth letter or a fifth card envelope. If you made this popped up on a video that Michelle Obama received. So it kind of blew that theory away. But it was interesting to end up with 9/11. That's for sure. But on the 562, which in the 20, okay, let me go a different angle. 2555, I believe it's a direct message to Nancy Pelosi. Within that is 25.
Got it up on the screen now.
Yeah. 2555 and then 2554 is inside of it. 2554's timestamp ends up, in essence, if you're doing the numbers and the math on the numbers, D5 is December 5th plus D5 as a 45 gives you January 19th, 2019.
Wow.
Right? And
take no notice of my times there. It's Aussie time there, so Aussie day.
Right.
So, yeah.
So no, that throws it off a bit. But the thing that it actually was brought to my attention by a comment on that decode that said, well, that it triggered that person to remember that date, that particular Q post, which was 562. This is January 19 January 2018. I obviously adjust the date because of your particular location, but as it drops in the U.S., right? Remember this day. Not date, day. Right? So, okay. So I throw that out there, and not for a discussion of the decode, but from a discussion of that day. That will be after the EO kicks in. And I think, Tex, you had some thoughts on the duration of the tribunals. But I put it out on the table. What do you guys think? A deadline and a finale? Kind of like since it was attached to Pelosi, it could be interpreted as, okay, you got until this date to do something. The see something, say something, and particularly the say something. Or
interesting.
Something else. I mean,
I look at it in the way that you're saying it. It's probably a beginning. Maybe it's the beginning of the takedown.
Yeah,
it could be. It could be.
Because I was thinking, is that kind of like the start of the tribunals? or the D class. I don't know if the D class is going to happen anymore. Not because it won't happen, because it's almost not necessary. The way things are going, it may not become necessary, right? But
and having Australia and England working with us, and if that all clears up, there's no need to drop it. The only way I see that the D class has a value is if the Brexiteers, which already did their referendum, were undermined. Then by dropping it, it just blows up their government in terms of the way they've acted. And that would serve a purpose for protecting the people of England. And other than that, the D class is almost kind of moot because it's going to come out in court with all these FBI and DOJ guys anyway, you know.
So basically, they're just using the D class to hold over their heads.
It's a sword of Damocles, right? It's just hanging there ready to drop. You know, the interesting thing, I don't know if you caught Pelosi's statement in her press conference. She said, I wish the press would get away from arguing about Trump and start talking more about politics. I couldn't believe it was her talking. And, you know, she looks like a nervous wreck all this time now anyway. But I think she's got some kind of message that's going on that she wants to stay in. And she's kind of trying to guide the press with what power she has to stop being so abrasive towards Trump. It's very fascinating she made that comment.
Kind of like a subtle tune change.
Maybe not subtle.
Well, I mean, subtle in the sense it wasn't, you know, kind of like a message to her colleagues, or kind of like a blanket statement, but more tacit, if you may.
Sure.
That's
well,
what
as offensive as she was during that press conference that was sprung on her, and what's his face, I can't believe that she would even be backing down.
I think what you saw in that meeting is she's incapable of good negotiation. I mean, you know, when you stand across from a person and say, let's do this in private, is that you don't want to show your true self in a negotiation. Is that at any time, you know, one of the things that's happened, and we call it, you know, loaded language or Orwellian, you know, doublespeak or whatever you want to call it. But it is the nature of everything that's out there. And if your truth is what you need to go towards. And Trump was putting truth out there. And what it does is it undermines people who go to a press conference and make a political pose. And you can't do that in a debate. You have to be honest. And if you're not honest, it shows up like a red flag. And that's what happened.
Well, Schumer and Pelosi are incompetent. There is no possible way they could be honest. They're not even honest with themselves, much less the public.
Well, they may be, but they're not stupid. Right, they may be dishonest, but they're not stupid. I mean, and not to contradict you, Wes. I'm going from the path of this, that the more I see this rolling out, the more and more I see that they actually have POTUS and Q Team, etc., has the goods on Pelosi. Again, that whole message that came in, and that whole dealings with Korea that we saw, North Korea that we saw in the past, and honestly, I saw that Oval Office session, and he had him dead to rights, if you may, in the sense of the incompetence in that case. I'll say in the negotiating. And I agree with you, Texas. They're not negotiating from a position of power. Nancy Pelosi can do all the blustering she wants, and even if she's the speaker, it's going to be an impotent house. They may have the majority, and they may have the majority to do certain things, but they can't get past the Senate. And as that dies all bills, the most they can do is some things on the funding side. But what do they already funded the 2019 year, except for the last 25% of it. And with that, she's got no power at all. And I think she knows it.
Right.
Another election in 2 years, though.
Exactly. In 2 years is another election. So if we couple that with what Q dropped in the Q&A that said 2019 they were going to push for voter ID, you know that the minute, and you of all people, Wes, that the minute they drop voter ID, down goes the illegal vote. And I don't necessarily mean from illegals. I just mean all around illegal votes, right?
Right.
Fraudulent votes. So from that perspective, what do you think the Dems have been relying upon for quite a few election cycles?
Especially here in California.
Yeah, especially there in California. I mean, I remember 2019 where I saw the videos of Boxer hiring illegals to do campaigning for her in the Central Valley.
Well, apparently you didn't see the one on Skid Row when you were filling out the ballots there.
No, I didn't see that one.
Skid
No.
Row and just have them filling out ballots and turning them in.
They already prosecuted 9 people for that.
Yeah, and hopefully they'll prosecute more because there was a lot of people being paid to do that.
Yeah, and he did say, I'm sorry, one comment. He did. It was very interesting. The Q&A, he dropped two posts. One of them was asked if the fraud was going to be revealed before January, and the answer was no. Then the other one was, would fraud be revealed, the fraudulent vote that occurred in California? And he says that the to watch California was purposeful, right? So the overall election aspect may not come up, but I think California is going to be used as the shining example. And if it's California, then you got Pelosi, Feinstein, and the next cycle would be Kamala Harris. Let alone the locals from a perspective of Gavin Newsom, et cetera, right? I'm speaking of the federal side, right?
I'm sorry, with Brown's record, you'll have to add him in there too in the first round because
right,
he is a major contributor to all the damage.
Right. You know, with voter ID and ballot harvesting, which is really a thing in your state or in California, is that when you look at it, you know, in Texas, it's actually a criminal offense. It's a chain of custody kind of issue. Is that, you know, you're actually grabbing votes that are the ones you want, and you're kind of ignoring the ones you don't need. And there's no chain of custody proving it. So here you get arrested in Texas for it, or you get fined. But the bottom line is it's illegal. And I have a feeling that's going to get contested in court at some point.
And hopefully it's soon.
Well, I hope we can turn California around, because what we've got now and what we've got coming as far as all of the laws that are going on the books that we never voted on, it's not going to be a pleasant place to live.
No, and that's why there's a big exodus right now, because they don't think it's going to turn around. And we need to step in now. We need them to step in and start doing something here in California to show these people that, hey, there is a federal law that you have to follow. We trump you.
You know, it's interesting. Apple just opened another site in Texas, or is opening announced they're opening a site in Texas. They've already had one, and they're opening a second one in North Austin, I believe it is. And they're going to hire 5,000 people. And I think what you may see is that it behooves Apple to move to a state where there's no state taxing like there is, and bring it over into a state where we just have our sales tax. And that's it. And it's not cheap, but, you know, it's better than, you know, we do fine, you know, is the way it works.
Tennessee's open for business. No state tax here either.
You know, here in California, there's talk of Brown. I haven't researched it all yet, but there's talk of Brown wanting to tax our text messaging.
Yeah. Oh, that's been
gaming and online gaming.
Oh, I hadn't heard the online gaming, but the taxing the text messages was all over the news on my neck of the woods from the California wanting to do that, and I couldn't believe I couldn't believe some of the interviews where people saying, well, if it helps others, I don't mind paying to that. It's like,
what about helping the ones that are paying for everybody to be here illegally, and then everybody else that can't get a job because those are here?
Right.
Let alone
that they speak a foreign language in order to get a job in your own country. That's the bad part. California's been out for 25 years.
West, I was willing to go to the neighbors and pick grapes right alongside all the illegals, and I was told no, I couldn't because I wasn't one of them.
When I was 16 years old, I worked in the beet fields here in California. And I worked all summer long. That's how I earned a living when I turned 16. I didn't go to work at McDonald's. I didn't go to work at Walmart. I went to work in the beet fields. And for these kids to stand there and say, oh, I can't work for less than $15 an hour is pretty ridiculous to me, because I made $3 an hour at that time.
You have a point, but I can't remember. I know my first minimum wage jobs, but I can't remember what minimum wage was back then. So you got me on that one.
The reality is people will do work. Some won't do certain types of work, but that's up to them type of thing, themselves, right?
Well, it just depends on, if you have to feed your family, you have to do what you got to do.
Right. No, that's what I mean. In the sense that so that whole concept that these are the type of jobs that Americans won't do. That's if you take going and doing a survey at at Berkeley, you're going to get that response, right?
Right. Because they think they're better than everybody else.
Yep.
I never thought I was.
Now that I dissed everybody at UC Berkeley.
Well, you know what?
Go ahead. It's okay.
I'll just throw this out there in a slight defense of our colleges, is that there's been an indoctrination program since the 60s. And if you go, the whole deconstruction, the whole postmodernism is a form of neo-Marxism. And so the guilt that was put on students to do the right thing for others because you have so much already, that equity, reassignment, balancing, people will work as hard as they get paid for. And if you take a great guy like Elon Musk and say you can make $100,000 a year max, he's smart. He'll work 2 months a year and take the next 10 months off working on his own or taking vacation. Yep. There's no point for him to do anything. Right. And so that's the whole value of having unequal earnings, because we have unequal talents, is that, there are people who are better at things than other people are. And we make our choice what we want to do for a living. And yes, there are definitely inequities in society, and there always will be, though. That will never change. But if you look at what caused communist Russia or Soviet Union to fall, was the fact that everybody got paid the same, and they never had what they needed when they wanted to, because people did not work up to their potential. So
it wasn't worth it. They wouldn't. No. I mean, to go along the line, when I was leading a team doing software development, one of the guys that was on the team that was brought in by the company was on an H-1B visa. He was from Russia. And he used to do software development for nuclear power centrifuges, right? To run the centrifuge. He was doing some penny ante computing software development, penny ante in the sense of the big scheme of things, right? For AT&T at that point, and he was getting paid more than he was in Russia, and he was doing less. And he says, I'm doing it because, it wasn't worth it in Russia. We had all this education and couldn't put it to use because the guy next to me was making the same amount of money no matter how good I was, to your point.
Well, that's the same thing as working at Walmart. I worked at Walmart for almost 8 years. It took me 3 years to get up to $10 an hour. And I worked 12 hours a day. And for them to come in and say, okay, $15 an hour is what we're going to up you to, I thought, that's ridiculous. I worked my butt off to get to that point, and then they're just going to hand out the cash like it's candy.
I'll throw a name out you guys might remember, but old Ronald Reagan. And granted, he was a B actor, but he made, when they had the really graduated income tax going on, when he was acting, he would work, I think, 8 months a year, and he hit his maximum. And the other 4 months he spent on his ranch because he couldn't make any more money from it.
Right.
And it makes sense. But what you lose, and I'm not saying we missed anything in Reagan's acting career that was of a major importance, but is that for 4 months a year, if you can't make any more, then go enjoy it. And what that does is it takes a talent or takes ability to, right. It takes wealth, produce, goods out of the market. And when you do that, it just lowers the economy. But that's really what Obama was doing with us. So,
yeah.
Obama was smashing our economy and sending people home. I mean, it was bad.
He was setting it up for the final blow behind him. They never thought she would lose.
Exactly. Thank God.
It's that old graph that what was it? They had the 16-year plan, and it was an old meme, but they had Obama's plan and what Hillary had to accomplish for the next 8 years, and how they were going to basically shut us down and we'd become part of the world community and we'd lose all our sovereignty, and how they were going to restructure America. And if you go back and look at that, all of it was happening under Obama. And you can start with Obamacare. And yes, you guys, please thank that judge because he really laid out what's wrong now and it's going to go to the Supreme Court. But this time around, what Roberts used as the tool to vote for Obamacare no longer exists. So, and that was the individual mandate kind of thing, or whatever the wording is on it. Yeah, right. It now becomes a tax, so it changes everything. It totally revamps it. And here it was brutal. I mean, my son had to go on my insurance, way back when, because otherwise he'd be, hit for God knows how much it was. Is that as a punishment tax. And here's a guy, my son's, a mixed martial artist and well trained, in great physical shape, and doesn't need a doctor except for maybe the occasional bump and scratch, and yet he had to pay a fee if he didn't get on my program. So
yeah, and that was a sad program. I'll tell you that right now. It was a joke, and thank God it's gone. I'm worried about people that have paid into it and what they're going to have to go and look for now. And hopefully there's a system set up for them.
So if I may take us back to the date 19.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, not at all. Not at all. I just was curious to hear from you what you guys thought. That's all I was really after. It wasn't, but the discussion was great. I just didn't get my answer, so I'm demanding it.
No, I said I think it's a start date.
Yeah, you did. I stand corrected. Was correct. Tex, you?
I really don't have a good handle. I really would have to look at that, but it could be, the complete. I think we're going to see right away. I think all this is going to just go right through the holidays of everything kind of crumbling apart. With going to get military tribunals. So I'm not sure, but I think you could see things like, the Congress working together to pass certain laws, because I do think still you're going to see certain members of Congress who weren't smart to resign at the end of this year or at the end of last year. Is that this year, actually, I guess you could call it. But is that you're going to see the people who stayed behind, like Feinstein and quite a few others maybe, are going to get knocked out. And I think that could be a reference point to that, because I think once you're sworn in, then they become, we can weaponize it against them and knock out, a severe amount of the party. So they have to work together. But
okay. Milkmaid, any ideas, or did you hear the tee up of the question?
I never heard the beginning of the question.
Okay.
I just inputted where I thought appropriate at the time. Sorry.
No. I'll recap it for you really quickly. One of the decodes I did on the numbers aspect of a message to Pelosi, the timestamp synthesized down to January 19th, 2019. And if you look back to Q post 562, Q has one simple statement is remember this day, not date, this day. And that post was on January 19th, 2018, where the timestamp actually ends up summing to the number 19. So I was canvassing the participants to see if they had a thought as to what that January 19th date could represent.
What day do they get sworn back in again? I thought that was early in January and not the 19th.
Around the 3rd or 6th or
3rd,
somewhere in
right.
there. Yeah, 3rd.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I'm not sure, but you know, your numbers fascinate me how you put them together. I can't do it. But they make sense when you explain them, which is really weird for me. So I hope that everybody else gets the benefit of that. And I got more rain coming, so it's going to get loud. I'm going to mute again.
Okay. Thank you for the compliment on the numbers. They kind of Tex has heard me say, "Oh my God," more than once.
Well, let me ask you, what do you think? What do you think? What are you predicting?
Okay, so to me, it's a marker. I'm reading it as one of two ways. It's either the start of the tribunals because there's a ramp up time of it, right? Even if they go through the holidays, because we're only talking about what 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks left,
sure,
of this year. But even though they get sworn in on the 3rd, don't they have to have the election for the Speaker of the House? That's not automatic. They still have to go through the cycle. The majority still has to elect it. And I wonder if that date is the targeted date for the election of the Speaker.
Valid point. That's a valid point.
Right? Wow. It's not automatic. It doesn't necessarily happen that quick, but that's just a guess. So my ring into the sorry.
Reach into the choir?
No, it's more or less of I was going to do a kind of like an Aussie related joke. Is the ring toss, right? The ring toss game. I tossed 2 rings. One being the start of the tribunals. The other one is Pelosi's potential loss of speakerhood.
Sure.
Okay. So Misty, if you have a thought, you're up. If you don't, that's okay.
She's headed back now. She was in here asking me a question. She'll be on there in just 2 seconds.
Hey, no doing dishes while we're on chat.
No.
What about you, Mad Hatter?
What about you?
Yeah, I think Pelosi. I personally think Pelosi's getting a little too ahead of herself with the Speaker of the House thing, because I've heard that a lot of the new freshman Dems coming in have a real issue with her. And so that's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. I was just sitting here trying to find out when the election for the Speaker of the House is going to be. Okay. Speaker of the House will take first week of January 2019 during the opening day of the 116th United States Congress.
January 19th.
Yeah, that's when they're going to.
Does that ring a bell, Tennessee?
Hey, one of my rings was okay.
Yes.
Yeah, the gematria is just phenomenal. You know, I'm the same way. I don't always get it on top, but once somebody spells it all out, man, it makes all the sense in the world.
Wow. And he did that on January 19th, 2018.
But you also have to remember that President Trump made it very clear that Nancy Pelosi was going to be the next speaker because he controls a lot of votes on the Republican side, and he can have everybody vote her in. He wants her in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he wants her in so they can implode.
Yeah, that was the whole point. Is that he's
I think that's a bomb.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, that's why he was tweeting before months ago saying, "Please do not get rid of Nancy Pelosi. Please, we need Nancy Pelosi," and that's why he wants her to get up there and make a fool out of herself, and it's going to bleed over to the rest of the Dems. So it'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, so it's just not going to matter if the junior Democrats don't want her in and don't vote her in. They can vote any way they want, but if all the Republicans throw their weight towards her for the vote, then, you know, he said he'd get her as many votes as she needed.
Right, right. Oh man, what a setup! What a setup.
I would love to see her voted in the same day that she's arrested.
I was going to put my 2 bobs worth in there, going, he just wants her there so that she could be publicly brought down,
Right?
Like he wants it to be a public spectacle. Right. Why is
that? Kaz, I think that's what we all want.
So going along with what Wes says. She puts her hand on the Bible, then the lid opens up and it's hollow and there's a pair of handcuffs in it.
Yeah, that would be great. Can you imagine the optics on that?
and awesome. And Ray has the keys.
you know, it's going to be funny, but you know, when we talk about military tribunals, they don't have to start on January 1st either, because chances are people are going to be arrested for general criminal offenses, and while they're in jail, the war crimes, treason, sedition type things can come later. They don't have to come first. We actually can put someone who was misusing their 501c3 for buying their daughter a wedding dress, and you know, the biggest shindig, whatever, and what other things that went on is that all those people have 501c3s. I mean, all of them have foundations. McCain his foundation was ramping up when Clinton's was ramping down. That was interesting. Then we look at other people. Yeah, that's what we paid for. I don't know if y'all can see that, but that's your taxpayer dollars at work. But you go through it. Thank you, Mad Hatter. That was perfect. And
I just wish we could cover the faces. That would be great.
Well, I just think Webster Hubble, and it'll come back to you.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
But you know, so I think you're going to see a lot of criminal prosecutions come out, and I actually think that's the first level that's going to happen, so they can take out people and put them so they can't travel. They're locked up. We've got them under control, and then move to the next level. And the truth is, the country can only take so much. So it's going to be very specific, I believe. Go ahead. Yes, Misty.
I'm not tired of winning.
Go ahead, Misty.
What you got to say, Misty?
Please.
I think it's amusing that they're just letting it all play right into Trump's hands, and because he definitely did a flip-flop on Nancy, and I think it's because he's in her hands as well now. So I think it's time we just start popping some popcorn and watching the show.
Agreed.
Yeah, I remember how shocking it was at least for me, I can speak then, and Tex and I have shared the same feelings of how shocking it was when he comes on and says, "Oh, I like Nancy. I support Nancy for speakers." Like, what? You know?
Yeah, but you know, he was being sarcastic when he was saying that, because if you know anything about Trump at all, if you followed him in any way, shape, or form, and Q, he was being sarcastic, and he's going, "Yeah, bring her on, because I will take her out."
Yeah, you know, it's funny. It's great tactics is what he uses.
Yeah,
he's a tactician, and he's executing. You know what I'm saying? He's making a series of events occur, and it goes back just like what we saw with Doyle and Monahan the other day. Is that, you know, Congress? We did it before the change of. You know, with Mark Meadows, well, it wouldn't have mattered anyway, but the change of Congress. But, you know, boom, right in. Here we go. And, you know, throwing it in there. And I think you're going to see a lot of these. I think, you know, Tennessee, you and I talked about it being carpet bombing before the Moab. And it's going to be quite entertaining. I mean.
Agree. Agree.
It's been entertaining already so far, just what he's gotten done and the people that he's just set aside. Look at Stormy Daniels. Look at the attorney. I mean, they're way too late. What is the word? The term? They're way on the side of the road. They're gone now. There's nothing they can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what's amazing? And I mentioned this to Tennessee in a conversation. The day after the Doyle Monahan hearing, I went to Drudge Report, which used to be kind of a bastion for all kinds of information. And I went there and there was nothing about the hearing, nothing, no link. And I thought, boy, it is really that deep that the press is really locked in. Yeah. Is that here was some real information. I mean, we got a bombshell FBI investigation in Arkansas. We got the documents. We know there's another 6,000 documents or whatever. There's a total of 6,000 documents. I mean, it's here. I mean, it's arrived. And yet they didn't even report. No one was reporting on it. And it shows you how controlled the media is. Either controlled or complicit, however you want to look at it.
I'm pretty sure it's controlled. I mean, half the reporters are CIA or ex-CIA agents, you know.
Well, as Cass pointed out earlier in the discussion, that it wasn't even by a good portion of the people, even those that follow Q, didn't pick up on the show.
Right.
Yep. And can I just say that I would imagine, just by what's, you know, what we all know now, CIA is probably the biggest employer in the world.
Right.
No doubt.
Directly and indirectly, right?
What a horrible thought.
It is a horrible thought, but if you just think about it, how many people have they got in place? How many traders are in place?
Well, they started back. I was listening to, I think it was your program last night, Kaz, that said it went all the way back to the Bushes, Papa Bush.
It went further back. Oh, well, CIA.
Actually, I'm going to throw something out there, and I've got the document. I'll have to bring it to our next show, but it's called Operation Rusty or Project Rusty. And what it was, about the same time Operation Paperclip occurred, which brought over Werner von Braun, say that 3 times when you're from Texas, is that when they brought him and the scientists over from Nazi Germany, the CIA had all these spies from Nazi Germany and also that were captured from the Soviet Union. And they created the OSS or whatever we called ourselves into the CIA using those people. So we were actually, our CIA has been infiltrated or started with at the very beginning. And the names are there, all the original players. And you can see how they did it. But I mean, we actually let ourselves create an organization to run on its own, clandestine, using the enemy. And
yes.
And they had stood outside of us since then. I mean, and we can look back and we know the Kennedy assassination today is not what has been told. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, all of us all at once say hi to Gina. She's joining us for this session.
Hi, Gina.
Hi, Gina.
Hi, Gina.
Hi, Gina.
Not to mention that Operation Paperclip, a lot of those the people that were involved with it from Nazi Germany actually helped found NASA. You know, so you tend to wonder how far those tentacles go and what's, you know, all the nefarious things that they have going on behind the scenes that are still going on today that were started back then.
Well, it'll be funny to see how long NASA lasts. I'm really curious to see, you know, since it was a public originally kind of setup, I'm curious to see where their value is going forward. I mean, once you stop the space shuttle, and granted, they're shooting satellites into space, but it's not something that, you know, Elon Musk can't do for us or other, you know, people like that. But it'll be, I would not want to be a NASA employee at this time. I think
Elon Musk is not such a good guy, though.
I'm not saying he is. I'll tell you what, I honestly think that he's
you're saying the private sector by using his name.
Yeah, and that's really what I'm throwing out. I think Elon Musk is susceptible to the same thing everybody else is, which is he's in deep financial straits. He's not been supported by the people who, quote unquote, got him going, which may be the wrong people. And I think what's happening is that Elon wants to succeed because he is a brilliant man. In fact, Jordan Peterson, I think you may know who he is, but he had a patient, and the patient was coming into him. This was during many years ago, one of his psychiatric patients, and the patient's coming in, he's saying, I don't feel like I'm an achiever. My roommate's doing so much better than me. I'm just not accomplishing anything. The person's roommate was Elon Musk. So
Wow.
talk about tough competition. It was easy to work on his therapy after that.
All right.
But yeah. It's going back to Elon. I think Elon would be a good guy. Is that I don't think he's necessarily nefarious, but again, much of this occurs and here I know it from being involved with working in my old profession for a period of time about how people come after you. And I think that Elon is in that position of being at jeopardy. So you do bad things. And when you do bad things, it's used to blackmail you, to get you to behave a certain way. Because I think what we're going to find is a lot of the people around the world are just blackmailed. They made a mistake.
Look at Lindsey Graham. The minute that McCain was taken out, his whole attitude and his demeanor has changed completely.
Yeah. And it could be that. It could be that he was a mole for us. We don't know. But Lindsay still looks a little nervous all the time. I think he's still. I think he was free, but he wasn't innocent. But
he wasn't pardoned. That's for damn sure. Well, another thing with Elon Musk is I like his the interview he did about AI. What he's been seeing about AI has just absolutely scared him to death. And
I don't want to see AI.
He said if we don't stop, then we have the opportunity to create an immortal dictator, quote unquote.
Someone asked him if we're living in a matrix, and he says, "How many?" And he says, "There's matrices everywhere. Is that it's all set up around you?" Back, and I kind of had this conversation with someone, I forget who, but back in maybe the 90s, there was talk, all this technology was coming out and home movies that you could rent, and how cocooning was the new thing. It was cocooning meant stay at home, you're going to relax. And what we were doing is letting ourselves be controlled. Our environment was actually being controlled by entertainment. And we were moving away from that, walk out alone, get your thoughts. Everything was being pumped towards us. So we had 24-hour news. We go to the airport, there's CNN. You go at home, you watch a movie that's been produced by one of 6 companies, and
tailored for you through recommendations, likes, and endorphin pumping.
And then slowly but surely, and someone mentioned this the other day, is that we gladly gave our thumbprints to Apple to activate our phones so we don't have to punch in a code. And yet now somewhere, all our thumbprints are collected. And 23andMe, do you really want to give your blood sample out? Even though the truth is, everybody's blood sample has been given out at some point and exists on some mainframe, on some cloud server somewhere. And it's a little bit frightening how, and I'm not a Luddite by any stretch of the imagination. I love technology, but the technology thing has really, we didn't see it happening around us. And what Dragonfly has to do with Google and China is that Dragonfly, in a certain sense, is already operating on a certain level here in the U.S. And, that's why people have turned away from using, certain programs and that type of thing, is that you got to wonder, what's safe anymore, or where are we at risk? I saw a thing with Facebook has a new thing at your home that follows you around. You can order it, and it eyeballs you as you walk around your room to tell you, make suggestions to, kind of tailor your needs. But while they're tailoring your needs, they're also taking a psychological profile of you is what they're doing. And they're doing it with AI. I mean, that's really what's happening. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
They do that with your cell phone too. They watch what apps that you download and which ones that you spend most time on. They can profile you that way as well, and also with the Amazon Echo. What apps you're using there, and what music you're listening to, and what have you. And then they can give you ads there. I mean, AI, I believe, is going to be rough. I was reading an article about they're still trying to download consciousness in AI.
Right.
And they have a computer called Blue Gene, and I think they're getting terrifyingly close. I mean, it's quite unnerving.
Yeah. And just in time for Christmas, Google.
Isn't it?
Google just I just saw an advertisement for it today. Google Whole Home. I think that's the marketing name, or whole house or something. I mean, it's all the Google tech into one single control unit, controlling your whole entire house. And I don't mean the aspect of just like some of the other toys. I'm talking about temp. I'm talking about doors. I'm talking about security. I'm talking about cameras. I'm talking about the whatever that Google, the Alexa equivalent at home from Google.
Right.
I don't,
so
all
if you're
that.
a registered gun owner and they decide that you don't need your gun anymore, they can just call them and say, you know what, undo the security. We're just coming in and taking them.
Yep.
Well, if you want to do something that's creepy, ask Alexa if she works for the CIA.
Yeah, it doesn't.
And what's her response? We had Alexa for a short period of time until I found out that she was recording our conversations when we weren't asking her.
Right.
And I've read other articles about people having Alexa in their house and they're doing dishes and nobody's saying anything, and all of a sudden she just lets out the creepiest laugh that you've ever seen. I mean, you've ever heard. And I'm just not down with all of that,
Right. Well, Google's made proposals, and Cass, I don't know if you've had this in Australia, but Google's made proposals to do Google cities, where they lay out all the fiber optics and all the thing. They'll set up the whole network, and the proposals, they offer you money to do this. They offered the city money to do it. And it's kind of like getting the foot in the door, and then all of a sudden you're in a surveillance environment. Kaz, have you seen that in Australia?
Not yet, but I'll tell you what, all hell will break loose if it does. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And what city would pass it up, right? From the perspective, it's money, and
well, that's the thing. It's a leader thing, is that they offer that. Say a city that's in dire straits, is that if you come in and say, well, we'll give you X amount of dollars. And it's not just that company. There's other forms of it too. But they buy into your city. Excuse me, fighting allergies here. And what happens is that they buy in because you're in need, and it bails them out. But the truth is that they own the city after that point. Is any company could do this. And if they have the technology, and then all of a sudden you're controlled. In Texas, you can go to a gun show, and you can buy a gun without having anything. I mean, they'll just say you can buy a gun from a friend who owns one. It's just the way we're set up.
Say private sale.
Say private sale. And
right. It's a private sale.
and that's what I'm saying. Yes, exactly. And what happens? What happens though if some unit is in your house watching you, and they do a record check? Well, let's check the gun people. Well, he has a gun in his house. Looks down and says you don't have a license. All of a sudden, there's a knock on your door, and you're being arrested. And the idea of having a computer handling my door locks is that, if you're late to a bill payment and that company's tied in with them, all of a sudden, boom, you're knocked out. Is that you can't get in your own house until you make that bill payment. Scary control.
That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy.
So what do you got to say, Mad Hatter? Any thoughts that come to your mind with all this?
Yeah, I think the AI is eventually, I think it's already getting out of hand. I've read articles about, a variety of different things, the Samsung, the smart TVs. There's an article out that's got a theory that it can reverse its pixels and turn itself into like a camera and see your room. You've got refrigerators nowadays that you tap on the door to see what's inside. I mean, call me old fashioned, but I like to open the door and find out for myself. I don't need a video screen. And I just think we're going to take it too far, but everybody has got these illusions of living, you know, in the Jetsons and you know, eating a pill for lunch and it being a full lunch. And a lot of these things that are developed there under the guise of, you know, helping humanity, making your life easier, making it more convenient. When in all actuality, we're doing exactly like you're saying. We're giving the government, these nefarious companies, complete control over our lives. I read an article just a couple of days ago that was put out, and it's saying that human anatomy is actually beginning to change because of cell phones, because everybody walks around looking down at their cell phone. And now they're noticing that in your neck, you're starting to develop, new whatever. I can't recall exactly what it is, but it's retarded because we don't have that human interaction anymore. We'd rather text. I mean, how many people text you before they'll call you?
Well, it's a funny thing with my son and his fiance who live near me is when they come over, I have a box in my hand and I say, okay, drop your cell phones in here. And for the time they're in my house, they can't use their cell phones because they'll find themselves in the middle of a conversation totally attached to it. And granted, we use it for our needs for this, but even we are susceptible to it. Is that think about how often we get our information now from our phones. And if it's doing radiation damage, and now with 5G having all these scary ramifications to it, and I don't know much about it. I mean, that'd be something you'd have to tell us, Bad Adder or Kaz, if y'all are up on it. But, it seems to be there's issues, and it's kind of frightening.
Well, I mean, even the games you play on your cell phone, you know, you link that to Facebook, and then Facebook links to this and links to that, and it all becomes just one vicious circle. And then, you know, for instance, when some of the more advanced Androids first came out, our family each got one. And I can remember driving by Target on the highway and our cell phones, you know, telling us what was on sale at Target, or, you know, telling us that, you know, it's been 13 days since you've been to McDonald's, you know, here's a coupon. I think that's just a little intrusive for myself. And it's a little ridiculous. You know, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Wall-E, but every time I think about this technology, I think of the fat people in the floaty chairs. And, you know, I mean, you can pre-order Taco Bell now, you know, you don't even have to go to the drive-thru. You pre-order Taco Bell. I mean, if you can't sit and wait on Taco Bell, I mean, come on. And, you know, you go to Walmart now and you see all these little girls and guys running around with these shopping carts, and they're shopping for everybody else that's sitting on their butt at home. And we're just, you know, Black Friday is about at its end, because I noticed this year that you could actually get all the Black Friday sales Wednesday or Thursday before online. And as a matter of fact, I ordered a real popular Black Friday item that they sold out of at the store. I ordered that sucker online. It took me literally 30 seconds. And they had some put aside for the online orders, and we ran on up to Walmart like a bunch of goobers and went and picked it up that day. And so convenience, I think, is going to be our biggest killer. We're allowing too many people to control how we think, what we do, and human interaction in itself is just it's just they're trying to make it, you know, less and less a part of our daily lives, and that sucks to me.
Well, I think convenience and laziness are going to be the downfall. I mean, people are so lazy now, they don't even want to work.
I agree.
You know, that's going to be the worst part, I think.
Yeah.
Not to mention that we've got, you know, a whole generation of these kids coming out of college that have been, you know, taught by all these, you know, leftist professors that the world always owes you something. You know, my son, he's in his late 20s. Excuse me. He and I were talking the other day about how nowadays men, for the most point, aren't men anymore. You know, you don't see a lot of guys in overalls under a truck fixing it, or, you know, you see them in pink fluffy boots and man buns and
Don't forget the skinny jeans.
Yeah, I told him. I said,
and I'm sorry, Mad Hatter. I've got to cut in here. And mine goes out in all this nasty storm and rain we've had today. And he's made sure I have hay all down the barn aisles for the week. He fed for me this morning. He's been soaking wet all day. He put the tractor tire on because it got flat the other day. He had to take it to town. He's done all of the work out in the rain, soaking wet today. He's my knuckle dragger. He's my knuckle dragger. Right. And I thank him every day for having all of his testosterone.
That's right.
Cool.
And I was going to say, blame it on, I was going to say.
Barack Obama overseas, talking about toxic masculinity. And
it's the low T, Mad Hatter. What
my tipping point, our son wasn't raised like that. He was raised to work on cars. He was raised to help his mom and dad out. We raised him, and I always told him that, you may not be the smartest or the most beautiful kid in the world, but you're going to have respect and you're going to have responsibility. And my tipping point with him was when we got him a car, and he sent me a picture from Walmart parking lot of his engine, so I could tell him where to put his oil in.
Oh my God.
It's the truth. He's not lying.
Oh,
you
that's
know what,
funny.
Matt? A lot of these guys can't help it. They're being fed so much soy. You cannot pick up a label, a package in the grocery store anymore and not find soy in it. My husband wanted to have chili hot dogs for dinner tonight, and I read the label to see if I could eat it. And the third ingredient was soy isolate protein. Mm-hmm. Even our mayonnaise has now gone to soybean oil instead of any other kind of oil. They're feeding the men so much soy they can't help it.
It's on the other side, technology-wise, is that the truth is that in the 70s, when I got my Camaro, it was a non-computerized car, is that it wasn't running on a microchip to do everything. Today, you have to go in. You have to take it in.
You have to plug it in.
You cannot get around it. And
right.
So, yes, filling oil is one thing, but a lot of the things, like my dad used to race cars, and, he'd pull out the engines and, he busted up his thumb because of it. But, that was what he did. And everything was mechanical. Now it's electronic. Now it's microchip. And it's a big change. I don't know.
Now the government.
Even when I was a kid, you're talking about your dad busting your thumb up. I busted my thumb up more than once. And what my dad's reaction was? Spit on it, rub some dirt in it, and it'd be okay.
Yeah.
Right. Well, there's one thing about the tech changing. Things evolve, right? If you go back to earlier days of cars to even to the age of the Camaro you had, Tex, it was way advanced.
Big difference, yeah.
Right, way advanced to the straight six bangers that they had before. But so moving it forward, but I agree with what Milkman was saying in the aspect of one, it's estrogen being pumped into the entire society. The other thing is that that's breeding the lack of what's the word that I'm seeking for?
I think it's initiative to even try to do anything.
Well, but it's the aspect of I'll use the term blue collar, but I don't mean that from a class structure or anything like that. The aspects of doing the general task, and I'm not saying necessarily a mechanic per se, but geez, the aspect of changing a tire on your car.
The heavy lifting, yeah.
Well, or just changing the tire of your car. They're literally men that don't know how to change the tire on a car.
Well, they were saying that fluoride that they inject into our water has the ability to take your will to fight away. It softens you. It's just amazing. If you go through all of these things that they've been feeding us and allowing us to drink, and not to mention the things that they spray in the air through chemtrails. It's just, it's phenomenal. It's a constant war on our minds and our bodies. And I think I'm glad, I'll put it like this. I'm glad we have a gentleman in office that has a spine and a backbone, and he's not afraid to say what he thinks, and he doesn't go around the world apologizing for being an American. And that I truly believe that we actually have somebody out there that gives a crap about us and not his pocketbook or his pocketbook. You know what I mean?
Let me tell you, he's put that all aside. I love the moment where at the G20, he's sitting there and he says, "Get me the hell out of here." And it was on mic.
That was great.
I mean, that is the kind of guy we needed, because the truth is, I'm looking at the G20 picture. And when I'm looking at it, the white-haired, dark-tanned woman from who was at the IMF or the central bank or whatever it was, I forget her name, but she's there. Bankers are there. And what do they belong at a G20 for? What does that tell you? That's control. And that's not the countries. That's not sovereignty. That's not liberty. And it's financial. And that's scary. I mean, it really changes how you look at things.
Well, you know, even just a small thing, if you look at the pictures of while he was at the G20 summit, all of the participants had the G20 lapel pins on. He had an American flag lapel pin on. And I know that is just a very minute thing, but that's like a quiet statement that, this is why I'm here. This is who I represent. I don't represent you. I represent our citizens, and I'm going to fight for them. And it's just refreshing. I love it that he brings that New York attitude. He's brilliant, and he fights for us. He cares about us, and that's something I don't think anybody's used to.
No.
And you know what? I want to go back just a little bit. There's 2 points. I read a lot of comments on videos now while I'm listening to the video. So I really don't always get the video, but I get to read the comments. And a lot of men in this country look at him as their father.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to the discussion you were having about men changing tires and not knowing how. Well, now that they're men, how many of you guys, and I realize I'm talking to a little bit older age group, I mean, my age, we're probably all in our 50s-ish. How many of you guys grew up with a father in the home versus how many 30 and 20-year-olds are growing up with a father in the home to teach them these things? Well, because they have broken our society so badly, and that's one of the things that Trump is pushing, is to bring us back to the nuclear family.
Yeah, he wants that family structure back. Well, they've done everything they can do to completely destroy the family structure. They've made it evil. They've made it yucky. They've made it huge. They've done everything they can do, and he's now bringing back the family structure. And I was in Walmart the other day checking out, and the little lady walked up and she said, "Well, have a Merry Christmas." And I was wearing my Trump hat, and she looked at my hat and she laughed and she said, "Isn't it nice to say that again?" And she said, "We can actually say that again. We can actually say Merry Christmas." So it's little things like that he is, baby stepping us back to where we were before, when we all used to be a family, when we went on vacation together and sat and had dinner together. And I know it was goober at the time when we were kids. We wanted to do anything else except that. But looking back on it now, that was a family structure, and he's bringing that back, and I'm proud of that.
Well, there's an intrinsic value to it. And, I think every generation looks back at a generation, or looks at a generation and says, well, back when I was young, and it happens. But, it's a funny thing. I had a couple acres, the home I bought in Connecticut. And we never locked our doors. And this was, in the 80s. And today, I mean, every night I make sure my garage door's shut. You know, it's got a little tie to make sure that someone can't reach in and do it. It's really our environment has changed a lot, and we can't blame it just on, you know, immigration or, you know, some group. We really have to say, you know, our society has morphed, and we got to look and get back to certain things that work. And I don't know your thoughts on it, but or y'all's thoughts, but might just want to throw that out there.
Well, if I may throw my 2 cents into that, it's the I think it's been an attack on multiple fronts. One, the family unit; one, education; one is spirituality. All three of those things have been on a frontal attack since the 60s ish or so, and that what we're seeing now is probably the second generation out of that. Hold on to your hat. The next one that's coming behind it is going to be tough, because they're the ones that are coming out of high school now, going into college and into the indoctrination centers. But that's my 2 cents. Those have been the three frontal attacks. The Christmas aspect is because people have not stood up for it, right? They've been beaten down, kind of thing. And I'm not saying they should have fought. I'm just saying that's part of the attack. The educational system, well, no need to recap on that. We all know that one. And the family unit through the promotion of feminism, and I don't mean to imply women. I'm saying the feminazi approach that says you don't need a family, you don't need a man, you don't need a child, you don't need it to be you. You need to be out in the workforce and forget everything else, because that's how you find your self-worth. That's what I mean by that part of it. And on the man's side is the aspect of saying, hey, you know, sow your oats, who cares? We'll cover her, so to speak, right?
Right.
And you get single families, single parent families.
I just want to throw in, you know, up in Minnesota, and I really haven't dug into it, but there's certain laws that have been passed that are undermining the family structure up there. And there's a group that's working against it. But basically is social services being a big intrusion on the family structure. And that's frightening. I mean, it really, I mean, here, let me tell you, if I did something wrong, and times change and maybe those things aren't the best things, but, you know, if you get in with a psychologist or a sociologist and talk to them, and you say, well, you know, I spanked my kid, is that, it's called social services, you know,
right?
Is that you've got a child beater. And granted, it's like the pendulum swung too far, and it's something we have to worry about. So let's take this back another direction. We've got Comey next week. What do y'all think is going to happen with James Comey?
In the hearings or thereafter?
Yeah, well, I'm curious what's going to happen in the hearings, because obviously they're reloading for him. And they're going to bring out information that he's not going to be expecting, you know, that he's either signed, done, whatever. And, you know, probably having Flynn's input on it. I'm just curious if anybody has any thoughts. And what's going to be coming up next week?
I expect doubling of the I know nothings that he did the last time. So it will be in the 400 count.
Oh, boy. You know, because... It's interesting is that all those people have been fired and they're under a cloud. But I'm curious when someone's going to pull out that, well, we have the testimony of Lisa Page who turned, or someone else who turned. And those things start coming out. Well, you told us this under oath, but Lisa Page we have this sworn affidavit here that she says this. I'm curious when that point is going to occur. And if you think it's going to occur now, or is that something that's going to occur down the road?
I don't think it's going to occur unless he's under indictment, because in the congressional hearings, all he has to do is say, "I do not remember," and there's nothing they can do about it. They could say, you know, I mean, obviously,
no legal authority.
Right, no legal authority. He could say, they could say, well, Lisa Page says this in this conversation, you told us this, and it says, well, I don't remember. You know, I have no recollection.
He has selective memory problems.
Oh, yeah.
He remembers perfectly when the Dems ask him a question, and he doesn't remember anything when asked by a Republican.
He remembers he just had one beer, milkmaid.
Well, until he actually get him into a tribunal and they have attorneys that have proof of what he's done, you're not going to get anything from him in any of the congressional hearings.
Oh, I hear that.
Pull the same game.
Sorry, I was making a funny on Tudor. That's why I was saying that. That's why I said
no, it's okay.
Rounding up these people for tribunals, I personally think that it's going to be, so-and-so tweeted yesterday, so-and-so hadn't tweeted for the last week. I don't think there's going to be a lot in the news about them being arrested. And I personally think once we find out that they're arrested, I think it's going to be after the fact that they've had that tribunal, because that way they can quell any protests, any riots, any freaking out over here. By the time they find out, it's over and done. That's it.
Yeah, I think they're just going to disappear off the face of the earth, and everybody's going to wonder what happened to them, just like you said, because they're going to be active one day and not for 30, and they'll be gone. Yeah.
Right.
We're not going to get to see perp walks. I really don't think so.
No, I mean, could you imagine Hillary perp walking in D.C.? I mean, come on. They'd be burning the city
we all
down.
would love it, but it's not going to happen.
They would destroy the country. The weirdo face mask people would be out there in their pink fluffy boots, flipping over cop cars and smashing Starbucks windows again, which Starbucks donated to their cause. But that's okay.
What? No walk of atonement?
Now that I'm sorry?
No walk of atonement?
I don't think so. I don't think we're going to get to see that. But now that he brought up the riots and stuff, oh, darn it, I lost that train of thought. Dagnabbit. Okay. Yeah, I don't think we're going to have walks of atonement as much as we'd like to see them.
It'll be interesting. It will be interesting to us. So
I personally like it to be Game of Thrones style. If any of y'all are,
there's going to be
same.
She got off scot-free. I don't know of too many people who wouldn't do exactly that to turn around and start reliving their life again exactly the way they want to do it.
Oh, I don't.
No, I'm talking about the left.
Yeah.
I have a feeling. I seriously have a feeling that they are going to do a couple perp walks just to let the world know, hey, we're not playing games anymore.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be like super major players, political players, but I'm sure we'll see maybe some FBI guys, Andrew or somebody like that going down. We will get a taste of it. We will know that it's happening, but I think the ones that would have the potential to cause riots and a lot of civil unrest, I think they're going to keep those, a little more under their hat. That's my own opinion.
I'm still holding out for the Hunter
Games, though, right?
Yeah.
I'm still holding out for the Hunter Games.
Yeah.
Do you recall?
I would watch that on TV. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you recall there was a movie that Ray Liotta did a long time ago? I'm trying to remember the name, but if you were a prisoner, you were tossed on an island, and all the prisoners were on the island, and everybody had to fend for themselves because there was a major security system that killed anybody that tried to leave the island. And it was like they formed camps. And can you imagine an island of pedivores? with 365, 24/7, 365 video cams. Yeah.
What would be even better is we could put AI around it, so they'd have to be on TV 24/7 too.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot.
That would be a good
I forgot we're live.
Oh, there's one strike.
Yeah, there you go.
No, it's interesting. I was watching a clip from. And it's funny how you didn't know things and you miss things. I was watching a clip from Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas the other day, and they had Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro, and there's a scene where he says, "Go into my thing and get the vial with the brown liquid in it," And he says, "What is it? What is it?" And he's already on LSD or something. And he takes it out and he says, "Oh, it's adrenochrome. You'll love it, but don't take a lot." And I thought, my gosh, none of us even knew what that meant. And now it's such a common thing. And what's funny, and maybe we're jaded already, is that we're aware of the human trafficking and all the other aspects. Let's just leave it at that. The Jeffrey Epsteins and so on and so forth. But I wonder, for the people who are just John Q. Public and find out that the people who disappeared in forests, the people who disappeared in, different countries, and, the 800,000 that go missing each year in, let's say North America, is that when they realize that a plurality or whatever of that is, like the Silsby gal who tried to take the children from Haiti, is that when we get to that point, it's going to be, I think that's going to be where you need to put your arms around people and hold them, because I don't think people believe it. I mean, I don't think people will believe it.
I still have my Facebook open, and I have people asking me questions about human trafficking, the children abductions. They're becoming aware. They're becoming awake. They don't know it all, but they are asking questions now, where before it was like, oh, don't talk to me about that. I don't want to hear about that. That's just evil. That you're full of it. But now they're asking questions.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Even my mother-in-law told me, don't send any information to her husband, send it to her. That is huge, because 18 months ago, she got mad at me because we didn't have television. And it wasn't normal not to have television coming into your house and paying $200 for a cable bill.
Yeah, my dad's a bit stubborn on talking about things. In fact, I had told him that Netflix was going to run into a problem. This was a few months ago when I saw what they were doing with junk bonds. He says, no, that's part of the normal, and he is a very astute businessman. Yeah, I mean, he's as good as they come. And in terms of financial and sure enough, I don't know if y'all heard about Netflix, is that they're in dire straits right now, is that their stock is falling, and that with Disney opening its own channel, they're going to pull all content that's Disney, which is Disney, Pixar. I mean, it's a whole conglomerate underneath it. It's going to get pulled and go to Disney. They're going to pull it from Netflix.
You've got Obama and Michelle running it too. And that's turning people off. They're turning away from it.
Yep.
Actually, that's when I dropped it.
Yeah. Susan Rice first, and then Obama doing the signing that big old contract for content.
Yeah.
I mean, really, what type of content do you think he's ever going to produce? I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know
how to fake your birth certificate 101.
Yeah, and then kill the person who gave it to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Have her magically drown on an airplane crash.
I wish all of our lives.
No, she had a heart attack. She didn't drown. She had a heart attack.
That's true. She had a heart attack in the water. Right.
Only one.
Only one, yeah.
Commit suicide with 2 bullets to the brain.
Yeah. Never mind the scuba diver that came up next to her.
Right. That was just absolutely amazing.
Have you seen those videos? Whoa, that was interesting. I tell you, there are people waking up for sure. Like you said, Wes, the first step is that they're asking questions. They're not just denying; they're now asking questions. They may disbelieve it thereafter because it's true. Some of the info it's incredulous, right? Or what's that line? Challenges credulity, but right. But at least they're asking, right?
My youngest son, it cracked me up. He said something, and I went off on this little tangent. I said, "Well, this is this, and this is this, and this." Mom, okay, I've heard enough. And I said, "Only because you know it, have you heard enough?" I said, "It's the people that don't know it yet and are asking the questions. They're the ones that need to know it." But my son just goes off, Mom, stop. You know?
Yeah, my son's the same way. He's like, I know this. I know this. You talked about it a year ago. And, and of course we had kind of this learning curve early with Q posts and that type of thing. And, so we knew information that was, to be out. It was almost like we were too far ahead of the curve in terms of telling people about it because we saw the clock tick-tocking. And now all of a sudden, I mean, with last week, you saw the first thread get pulled of the sweater or the nightmare is that it's really starting to happen. And yet, gosh, I've been talking about it for a year on Facebook and anybody else. I got thrown off of Twitter, but those things happen. And,
So since we're on that kind of that line of thought, have you guys noticed, or maybe it's just me, but have you noticed a wave of there's always been the shills and the trolls kind of thing, right? To use a chatter terminology there, but or shill being more generic. But have you noticed this wave of I'll say fake MAGA, but I don't necessarily mean that in general. I mean this whole thing of Trump is not running the government is not being run like you think it's being run. Q is not real. Q's been promising a whole bunch of stuff, but nothing has come true. That kind of. Have you noticed that kind of a new wave of that, or is it just me that's noticing?
No, it's everywhere, and I think that's everybody wanting things to be done on their time, and I think they don't have an inkling of the depth and precision that has to go into quote unquote the plan and these things that they're carrying out. But if you think back on Q, he has actually telegraphed the left's moves 6-8 months ahead of time, and he's always on the dot. So yeah, and then a lot of the fake MAGA, I think that's just to simply discredit the movement. They come in, they act like they're pro-Trump, and then they get some type of airtime, and then they show their true colors, and that makes other people hopefully turn off from the movement. But I think this far into the game, I think a lot of people are seeing through that. They can spot it a mile away when it walks up to them, and the movement's getting smarter.
I think when they start doubting the plan, that's when people turn around from them and say, you know what, I don't want to listen to you anymore. And I've done that to several people that I really like to listen to.
I think another thing that's happened is that some people in this movement have become dogmatic in their thinking. And in doing so, they've locked themselves into a trick box and can only accept a certain way it's presented. And the truth is that all along, the main theme has been think for yourself, be a critical thinker. And, for some people, that may be their norm anyway. But for many people, they just have they're just going on, picking up their guitar in the evening and playing it and seeing a sale on TV and going shopping. And, I think a lot of people are just don't have it. And other people are dogmatic, and then other people are disappointing because they wanted to see blood kind of thing. Instead of saying, you know what, let's absorb information. Let's be critical thinkers again. I joke with Tennessee. I said, don't have an open mind. Your brain will fall out. Have a critical mind. Is take a look at things and say, what is, I didn't say it to Tennessee, but I said that as just a general conversation. People need to think critically again. And for so long, we've been pushed away from that. We need information, we go to Wikipedia. We need an answer, we go to Siri. And all those things can help. But that doesn't substitute thinking for yourself and putting pieces together. When you start doing that, you really grow. And you will not be trapped like we've been trapped for 100, 150 years. Who knows? But, there's been a blockade and critical thinking.
Right. And just like our history books have been changed. Kaz is an excellent digger. I mean, there's stuff that she has found that I have just been flabbergasted at that I could not find anywhere. And I don't know if it's because she's on that continent or if it's just been erased from the internet. But as far as that goes, we have all turned into a bunch of trolls, actually, because we don't even dig for it. We have. I mean,
well, I mean, they've got the whole gambit locked up. For instance, right. You know, if I tell you, oh, so and so said this, a lot of these people, they're so programmed, they'll go onto the web and they'll look on Snopes and see, and Snopes says, oh no, that didn't happen. Well, they don't know who Snopes is actually run by, right. and so they're caught in the web, you know. And
let alone the partially untrue or partially true.
right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call them partially true or untrue. I call them total lies, most of it.
No, it's how they rate. I was just using how they rate certain things, because they'll find one little tiny angle and they'll call it partially true just from that little thing. let's say 99.9% accurate, and that 1/10 of 1%. And they'll call it partially true for that. Right. That's what I was referring to.
Well, I mean, that's like the FISA, when they were trying to get the FISA warrant. You know, they go and make a story up, and then they run to a reporter, and then they have the reporter report on it. He publishes the story, and then they go back and they bring the judge the story, and they go, see, you know, we're not
corroborating.
But they don't bother telling the judge, I'm the one that gave fakes. You know, it's. I agree with Q. These people are stupid. You know.
You know, going back, I think one of the worst moments, and it was done for many of us, we accepted it with integrity because we thought integrity was out there. What was the moment the Patriot Act got passed? Is that when you name something the Patriot Act, they're trying to appeal to something instead of, it's like, you know, Obamacare has this affordable care, you know, is that they become something that you just want to say, okay, I trust the people involved. And the truth is, if we were critically thinking back when FISA and the Patriot Act came out, we would, if we really looked at it, we would have never accepted it, at least not for a long-term situation. And now it's become something that's been abused because at the time we didn't realize the rambling of our three-letter agencies doing their own things. We really didn't know that was happening, and or we didn't look into it, and maybe that's the fault, or we looked away. But we just accepted on face that, okay, we've got 3 buildings that are completely destroyed in New York City. We'll accept your word. And there were certain people in that government, both Rumsfeld and Cheney, I never trusted. And I kind of followed the money on both of them. And, you know, what they invest in, what their backgrounds were. And I always felt like they were just creatures of self-supporting, you know, nature, that they wanted to help themselves. And your thoughts on any of this, y'all?
Tex, I actually had a question for you. Would you mind, for the audience, would you mind kind of giving a rundown, a definition, examples of critical thinking? I've been hearing that for over a year now. Think critically, but perhaps people don't understand exactly what that means, because I know I had to really think about it. I think that maybe I just live in that situation where I'm critically thinking all the time because of the way I live on the ranch, having a load of responsibility. And I thought, okay, well, what does that mean? I mean, because I'm not in front of games and stuff all day long, and I'm not in an office. So, and I don't have stuff spoon fed to me all the time. I have to go look for my own things and talk to you all and things like that. But there might be people out there listening saying the same thing. What does he mean? What is critical thinking? What have I lost here?
Well, you know, it's a good point, is that critical thinking, first of all, is take a look at your environment. Your environment makes you think critically. Is that a rock is a rock? People can tell you that, well, the world is just an illusion and there's no rocks. Well, until you stub your toe on one, you don't know it's a rock, or you run your tractor over one, is that things are what they are, and that's how you have to look at it. But you have to look and research, is that we no longer, we have now allowed ourselves to turn to outside sources to give us the facts. And that's a mistake. And, and part of it was, I grew up with Walter Cronkite, Eric Sevareid, and Chet Huntley and David Brinkley. And that was all the news there was. And those people, that was all the facts you had. So you really had to research if you wanted to know more. And the simple fact of reading, the simple fact of saying, you know what, I don't believe what David Icke says, and he's got videos on things, or I do, because I see these following things, is that you have to analyze. And the way you do that is, first of all, words mean something, okay? Is that you have to talk, you have to speak to truth. And when you see language being changed, that's the first thing you have to deal with. Then you have to look at your environment. Is that, what kind of environment do I have? Is it one where it's all coming to me? Or is it one where I'm going out and searching for it? Those would probably be the first two steps, I think, that are important in critical thinking, is to walk away from the input and sort it out in your head, is walk through the steps. People don't do that anymore. And, I think there's a whole process to critical thinking. And that's the start of it, is really understand, stop, just stop and be in the moment and take a look around you. What are you doing? Okay. It used to be we'd read a newspaper. Well, the truth is, who does the newspaper work for? Well, this one's owned by Jeff Bezos. Well, what's Jeff Bezos? Well, he builds a lot of stuff for the CIA. Okay, well, that's interesting. But no, people just stop and say it's the Washington Post or, whatever. It must be valid. If the gray lady, New York Times, is dying, then it's time to ask yourself, well, why is that happening? Well, why are people walking away from it? So it's really a matter of taking your inputs you have to go and search things out. You can't let yourself be force-fed things. And I think that, Milkmaid, your environment is a perfect example of living in a forced reality, or Tennessee with your homestead, is that you really learn to be a critical thinker, because if you don't, you die. And you're not getting the input from, outside sources telling you how to do it or how to eat. I mean, for how long has soy been a positive thing? And, or how long has fluoride been a positive thing? They didn't know what to do with it, so they said, oh, it's good for your teeth. Well, they didn't tell you what it's bad for. So did you do the research on that? So if you come to my house, you get aquifer water. I've got, a dozen bottles, 5-gallon bottles of aquifer water, so you can drink relatively pure, untainted water. And yet, it's things have changed. We really, you go back, certain things, glass is better for you, unleaded glass, obviously, but glass is better for you than plastic is. Do we even think about that anymore? Can you even find glass when you go searching for a drink? Or is it all aluminum cans, or is it plastic bottles? Well, we know plastic chips. I mean, all those kind of things. People need to go through that process. And when they start doing that, the whole world kind of opens up to you. And that is critical thinking. But again,
also, Texas, I'm sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
We've also lost common sense. There's a lot of people out there that do not have common sense. They haven't got a clue.
Common sense starts with critical, with looking at your environment. Is that...
They say common sense is not so common anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to try to teach a child common sense, it's lost on them. They have no clue what they're even looking for, or doing with it. Look at the schools. They're teaching them. They're teaching them to be completely different from their parents, from their grandparents, and then they have to come home and be retaught at home. And I'm finding that a lot with my grandson.
Yeah. What's funny is that my son was when he was 5 years old, they realized he was at basically IQ that put you in the top 10th percentile. And they told us he needs to go into a different type of school, like a Montessori's, they were called back then, where you're put in and you just learn at your own rate. And we didn't want to separate him. We made a bad decision. in that we said, no, we want him to grow up like a normal child. And what ended up happening is that he got bored with school and stopped going. And the funny part is when it came to get his GED, is in essence, I homeschooled him. And it took us a month to make up 2 years of high school. And he passed in the top percentile. And that was a good lesson for me. Too late for him. But there's certain things you need to look at. And again, I guess the nicest thing about critical thinking is remember 1 equals 1, A equals A. Things are what they are. And you've got to take a look that when you walk around your environment and you see what's happening, is that if a plant's not growing, it's because it doesn't have something. You should think of yourself as a macro version of all that, is that speak truth. Think about when you're not saying things that don't make sense, okay? Catch yourself in it. And if you feel like you're not even saying truth or you don't have validation for it, you shouldn't speak. And what will happen is all of a sudden your brain's going all along saying, I just did a stupid thing there. I shouldn't even be talking about it because I don't know what I'm talking about because Wolf Blitzer told me that. Or whoever you want to pick, is that you need to be able to say, you know what, where did that come from? And what does that mean? I mean, the funny thing is that all of us here know how to find FOIA information. We all know where the FBI vault is. We all know, I mean, we can dig today. And digging is what school was all about, is that nothing was fed to you and then has to be repeated. It was go out and find it. And you had to go to the library and pull 12 books off the shelf and start reading them and going to the index and looking up the topic and putting it together in a whole coherent thought. And then you could speak truth because you could sit there and say, well, I believe this, that, and the other. And there's a difference between, rational thought and faith. They're two different things. Don't get them confused. One stands outside the realm, and one stands as metaphysical, and one stands as physical. And then think that way. Go ahead. Yes.
And P.S. There's 2 genders. Only 2 genders. It's not man, woman, and fish. There's only 2 genders.
And a lot of our kids are also taught there's always an app for that. If you don't know something, there's an app for that. There's an app for that.
Exactly.
Google it.
We're not made to go. Like Tex was saying, back even when I was a kid, if you had a book report, you normally had 2 avenues. Everybody and their brother either had the 1923 World Encyclopedias that people did book reports out of, or you had to get up off your butt, you had to go to the library, you had to go through the Dewey Decimal System, you had to find a book, you had to check it out, yada, yada, yada. There was a whole slew of things that you had to do. But I was talking to some parents the other day, and nowadays they're not teaching kids analog clocks. They're not teaching kids cursive writing. And anytime, and I'll use my son for an example, anytime I have a question for him, if he doesn't know it, he's on an app. Oh, don't worry, Dad, I got an app that'll tell me that. And so we're not encouraged to critically think. We're encouraged to rely on somebody else to give us this information, and we're becoming very lazy, and this next generation is just going to be
Mad Hatter, if you said 15 years ago, do you want to homeschool your children, I would have said no. Today, right. I have a totally different attitude towards the education system.
Right.
And in California, they're actually saying that if you homeschool your child, that you have to jump through all their little hoops, and they can report you to DHS for keeping your child out of school.
And that's the wrong state to live in. And I think that's critical thinking right there. If it has to be sold to you, or if it has to be done at the point of a gun, be it taxation or a threat or legalities, then maybe it's time to move. You know what I'm saying? Is that those people aren't acting in your best interests. And that's the way people, I know, I agree. Oh, I was talking to the dog.
one of the aspects that I look at from the critical thinking perspective is 2 questions. What are they telling me? What are they not telling me? So what's being said, and then what's not being said.
The words have to match the music.
Right.
Yep.
And you know, there was a an interesting that stuck in my head, and I'm not trying to bring faith into the discussion. There was an interesting thing my preacher did said in one of the sermons he was giving. They had to do where the aspects of he who is without sin line, right? Statement by Jesus. But it was the whole point was so they brought the woman up, but the law says both the man and the woman caught in the act of adultery had to be stoned to death. But they only brought up the woman. And he kept saying, who was missing? Who is missing? Right? Who's not in the story? And so that's where he came up and he says, look for what is missing, what is not being said to you. That's how you research. That's the critical thinking.
Well said. I mean, that's exactly. But again, that goes back to where I said, you know, is that I had to, you know, go to U of M at University of Michigan, let's say, one of the many great colleges I was thrown out of, and go in and sit down in the library and pull 12 books out from 12 points of view.
Yeah.
And put it together and look at historical, look at logical thinking. I mean, simply today, I don't know how many people study logic and the simple fact of just understanding how you get from A to B to C. And I'll tell you, maybe we'll bring it up in one of our talks, but I'll bring up how you find truth in arguments is that there's a whole series arguments that are absurd, arguments that are done strictly from I know I'm right, so that's it. You know, it's not an argument, it's not a debate, it's not open thinking, and you can walk away. You know, it's just we need to talk about those things, and for me, it's already there. But you know, for a lot of people, if you've had this red pilling time, you know, some people just kind of float away from it. Is that their arguments become ad hominem attacks or attacking you personally or attacking a movement personally without saying, well, you know, well, I just don't like it. It's not an answer.
Can you say climate change?
Yeah, exactly.
Gentlemen,
yes,
gentlemen, can I pose a suggestion that we all have some notes or write some notes on some of these things you're bringing up so that they can be future topics and we could research them a little bit better, get our thoughts around them, and bring them up as future topics so that people can learn from different experiences in life. It's like, why were you thrown out of 12 colleges? Don't answer now, but you obviously have done something or were overly intelligent or there was something. And so people can learn from the experience of this group. In just what I asked right now, critical thinking, you guys have talked quite a long time on it. And there are so many other things you've brought up in the last few minutes that people need to learn that they haven't been taught in school. So
good
if you
point.
wouldn't mind making some notes so that these are things that could be brought up later when we've had a chance to actually think on them, write down a few notes that we want to speak on, and then go from there.
Good idea.
I would also ask that they do in our Discord if they have any questions to either DM us or leave a message for us and let us know what kind of information they would like to have.
Wes, that's a great idea. Thank you. Actually, could we add a column in there somewhere for specifically for questions? That way they're not DMing a certain person because 5 people might have different answers that are all valid.
Yeah, it should be. We could put one for questions and we can work them through there. That'd be good.
That would be awesome. Yes.
Okay, what else do we want to talk about here? We've covered a lot of time here, but
I would like to bring it back to school. Actually, the fact that they're not teaching cursive writing, and another reason why they're not teaching it is because of one certain paper that has a lot to do with this country, I believe, and that would be the Constitution is written in cursive.
Here, you want to have some fun? Let me see if I'm not muted. Okay, good. If you want to have some fun, I read Shakespeare from the original manuscript, and the handwriting that they had back in, 16, whatever it was, is that it's actually very difficult to read. The S's, the F's. I mean, it's really a challenge to read through it until you get to know it. And yet, if I can do that, then I can do something else, and I can do something else. And yeah, there needs to be that progression of learning that doesn't exist. We need a school would actually be a one-night conversation, probably. What was that math that they were doing for a while in schools?
Common Core, they're still doing it.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. Oh my gosh! I looked at that and I was like, this is silly. Do your times tables, and it's all going to make sense. Because
they send homework home in with paper. They don't even send a book home. There's not even a hardback book anymore. It's a tear out piece of paper that they send home, and they expect the parents to try to help these kids with it, and the kids are not getting it in school. I've taken my grandson to the school, to the classroom, and said, look, he does not get this. He needs help with this. I can't help him because I don't know how to do your Common Core. I said, your Common Core makes absolutely no sense to me. I can do it the long way, and I can do it the short way, and I can do it the right way. I said, but you're teaching them a whole different way. It's not working.
Right.
And this teacher looked at me and went, well, this is the way we have to do it. And I said, well, obviously it's not working. And my grandson is not a stupid child. He's very, very intelligent and very smart. In other subjects, he's a straight A student. Common Core is not cutting it.
I would suggest that if anybody's interested, there are videos out there on Common Core where they've actually taken a blackboard or whiteboard out on the street and stopped people that are adults and middle-aged adults and asked them to solve these problems using Common Core. And even an engineer stood there and looked at it and said, this is stupid. Just add 1 and 1 instead of going through 15. And I watched a couple of those videos and just started shaking my head saying, I understand what they're doing, but it's only to make more confusion.
Well, and if I may, Milkmaid, using that example, stepping back, not you stepping back, but just stepping back and look at, why do you think they're doing that? Just, it's a table question, not just you, a table question, but answer, please.
Yeah, but if I might go first, because my mic's already open.
Yeah.
Rainstorm on my metal roof right this second. It's to separate, in my opinion, it's to do several things. It's to dumb down the kids, make learning difficult for them when it shouldn't be. It should be fun. It should be engaging. And it's to separate the parents from the kids because the parents cannot help the kids. And then the kids look at the parents and say, you can't help me. That's what we're for. Bingo. We're there to help our kids. And when our kids look at us and we say, I can't help you, you failed your children. And they've been set up to have that happen.
I agree with everything you said and take it one step further. It's to separate you by your children thinking you're incapable of parenting.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're both totally right. I have gone through this with my grandson. It's like, I am going to help you. I'm going to show you how to do it my way. You're going to get the correct answer. I said, but if your teacher says anything to you about Common Core, about the way you got this answer, just tell her it's the right way to do. And if they have a problem with that, bring it back to me and I will have a talk with your teacher and I'll even take it to your principal because I've had it with Common Core. The woman that Trump has put into office to stop this stuff has not stopped it, and it needs to go away. We need to teach our children.
Yeah, for it's interesting because I don't know if it really works on a federal level or a state level where that happens because I do believe some states have already gone away from Common Core. And
it's at a state level, Tex.
That's what I thought.
The implementation is at a state level, and the variances are at a state level. Yeah. So you get progressive states like where West is at, and you're going to get the full Monty. You get more conservative states, let's say the Texas and Oklahoma, let's say the flyover kind of concept, right? You're going to get the more resentful or pushing away from it.
Good point.
But the only thing we can do is fight back. I mean, in California, we have to fight back. We have
yeah, no doubt. But and I was taking Milkmaid's comment into the aspect of, again, an example, if I may, of the critical thinking aspect is, what benefit is it to in one way dumb down the children under the auspices of teaching them a more conducive way of learning, being facetious there, of course, or sarcastic, really. And the other one is, look at the separation that it creates, because now, in essence, West, it has pit your child or your grandchild between you and your teacher. And I'm not putting a monkey on your back. I don't mean that. From the kid's point of view, from the child's point of view, he's got the teacher telling them one thing, and he's got his family telling them another thing. And at what point is the child going to lean one way or the other? And how many are going to lean towards the teacher because the teacher is rewarding them, versus the parent who's telling them either I can't help you or you got to do it this way, right? Kind of thing.
The frustration is high. It's high when it comes to math in this house. I can tell you that right now. My grandson does math for 3 hours every night. And that's on cheap. And that's ridiculous. This child should be able to go to school, come home, do maybe hours with the homework, and go play. He's not allowed to do that. He has to sit there and finish his math, and it's got to be done. And I took it to the teacher, and I said to him, and 3 hours worth of math every night is getting ridiculous. I said, this child does not even get to go and develop his mind. He's got to sit here and concentrate on this, and then he's got the frustration of both his parent and myself trying to teach him something that you're teaching him completely different. And I'm battling the school with this right now.
You're fighting the good fight, though. You got to keep it that way. Is that and there's a thing that we are all subject to, and it's by something natural within us or innate in us, either genetically or socially done. But we all respect authority. Is that we look at a person who is a doctor and we trust them. But I go in, is that I don't get a flu shot anymore. And yet, it's free. Go ahead. Is that, no, you know what? I can live with a cold, but I can't live with the side effects of the shot for 3 weeks. And so it makes sense to me. Do we challenge the authority figures to prove to us we need something? And it's like medications. I had heart surgery. Is that at what point do you need all the medications they want to give you? And in turn, what are the side effects? I think, Mad Hatter, you made the same comment to me, is that, they recommended a multi-$1,000 medication for you a month. And by recommendation, you want to accept their authority. But doing research, you're able to say, you know what, I can do this. Right. And that's key, is that you talk about critical thinking, is that accept no one as the absolute, because no one is an absolute. We're human. And I think part of the mistakes that's happening, and we talk about Congress and we talk about foundations that are supposed to be so good, is that we've come to accept them as being, we need to trust them. No, we need to hear what they have to say and then analyze it and put it into our terms and make decisions on our own, not have someone make a decision for us. And yet, the truth is that for years, we've trusted Congress to make all the quote unquote right decisions because we elected them, which is not true, because only about 40% vote. And so that even right there, you're already in trouble. And no, people don't take responsibility for voting, which really blows me away on top of it all, is that, but don't trust authority just because they're authorities. Is
thank God that we had lived through Obama, because we have been shown how bad they really are. And thank God for the Q team, because they are showing us how to actually learn and dig for the information. It's out there. All you have to do is look.
And I think what's going to happen is that we've been able to build up some tools in researching, and we're going to be able to take those tools to the people who get the shock that's going to be coming up and say, well, here, let me help you out. You know, these are the tools I use, and this is the way I go about things, and help people learn to have a toolbox of things to get them through it, and how to turn to their families for help, and how to turn to other resources aside from what's being broadcast on the TV by an organization like the CDC. Who are they? Who's in charge? You know what I'm saying? I mean, we listen to the federal bank. We need to stop spending so much. We need to cut back our debt. Well, who are you? You know what I'm saying? Ask those kind of questions of any authority figure. And that's the right way to look at things. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm talking too much.
I'm sorry. The schedule of drugs. Do you know who brought that to us? Does anybody here know who brought that? No. The UN gave us the schedule of drugs.
Oh, I didn't hear what the first word before drugs. Thank you, Wes. Sorry.
Schedule.
The schedule.
Yeah, schedule
for drugs. The UN brought us that. UN wants to take our guns. The UN is trying to dictate our laws here, and they have done a pretty good job of it so far. And we need to cut them out.
This stuff has been going on for so long. I get back to my vicious circle. Like you talk about Common Core and it taking the parent finally telling the child that I can't help you. Mm-hmm. Well, in my own mind, that puts it in the kid's mind that the teacher is somehow smarter than the parents, that I need to rely on my teacher. Well, that goes all the way with that child. And then when you get that child into college and you've got these professors,
they're done. At that point, they're done.
Socialistic theories and how they need to live and what have you. And parents by then are just complete morons in their eyes. And then you talk about the pharmaceuticals. You got pharmaceuticals. You take a pharmaceutical for gout. Well, guess what? Well, the side effect is high blood pressure. Then you go take high blood pressure and the side effect, and it's all this big vicious circle. They've entrenched themselves so deep into our society and our daily life that we don't even notice anymore. It's like a smell in your house. After you walk in your house a couple of days and you smell it, you don't smell it. And, we've got television that they call it television programs for a reason. They tell us how to think, what to wear, what we should accept. It's all an entrenchment. It's all a constant attack on our minds. And I think it's just happened for so long that we just simply accept it. I mean, think about how long we accepted the government. That's just what they do. Well, it's just good old boy politics. Well, there's not a damn thing we can do about it. You just kind of accept it and try to vote in a good person the next time. Well, the next time never happened.
Well, look what happened in 1776. We broke away from Britain. We created our own government, and our government has taken us over again. And I'm afraid we're going to need another 1776 if this doesn't work with you.
Well, I'm meaning absolutely no disrespect, but we did not break away from Britain. Our ancestors did. They left that in our blood and in our DNA, and it's up to us to take care of the problem.
Right.
Well put. It's a generational thing.
Yeah, but especially this generation. I mean, you go anywhere. Go to a restaurant. Go to a mall. Go anywhere. Go to a sporting event. I go to sporting events all the time. At least 40% of the people are looking down at their lap the entire time. We are walking.
Or they've got the video camera up and looking at it.
We're walking little zombies. Mm-hmm. In behest to Apple or Samsung or whatever the newest damn thing is. It's ridiculous, and there's got to be some type of pullback at some point in time. And I think once a lot of these things go down, and Google is losing their shirt right now, and a lot of these major tech companies are losing their pants, and I think it may take. I mean, hell, you know what? Personally, I wouldn't mind a month with no internet. I know that would screw the entire world up, but it would also teach people, like the kids, guess what? You can still go outside and play. We used to have to go outside and play. Yeah. Oh, my God. God forbid you read a book.
Yeah.
You know
What? A book? Where's my e-reader?
Yeah, you can color. You can play with blocks. Yeah. So I don't think something like that from a parent standpoint. Now, I'm not talking about all the infrastructure. I'm just talking about from a parent standpoint. I'd love to have, a month without the internet, without Snapchat and Facebook and Twitter and that make kids experience life, not just show reality that they have in their hands on.
And if I may bring not a full circle, but an aspect to the what we were talking about earlier with the various perspectives on when it hits the fan, the financial aspect of it, what it's going to mean. Ooh, we lost Milkmaid. No, who did we lose? Oh, Misty. That acquire books right now. Because when you won't have and I facetiously said the e-reader, but when those are not around, when the text not available either through the internet or whatnot, or from a perspective of you want to say here, instead of this electronic device, use this hard copy device, the book, acquire books, go to
if I may, one of the fantastic places to get good old books, especially the classics, are thrift stores.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I get them left and right, and then also right inside the front door of your library is usually Friends of the Library books, and they're about 25 cents, and you'll find a lot of good outdated books that are the books you're looking for. Sorry about that. I had to help you.
No, absolutely. Even if it's fiction or things of that nature, fantasy or whatnot, it's the aspect of that is the escapism perspective, not necessarily that they always have to be historical or informative books, right? Those are good as well. And yeah, you're right. Thrift stores, secondhand bookstores, garage sales. I'm very thankful, and I think I showed it one time that friends of mine that were visiting me, they know how I like history, and they found me at a picker's place, like antique store kind of thing. It's the Life magazine, but it's a hardcover book, picture history of World War II that was printed in 1950, 5 years after the war was over. So it's not only historically, it may be jaded, if you may, but from the perspective of that time, but it's got all kinds of photos that you hardly even see anymore. Anyways, that's just an example.
Well, even at that, all of our history, they're trying to jade all of our history. Charlie Brown, he's racist. Baby, it's cold outside. Well, that's feminist. You can't watch that. You can't listen to this. You can't read that. You don't need to learn about the Civil War. That was all about slavery, which was a lie. They're taking all of our history and they're convoluting it, and they're making it to where, they don't teach it. I mean, for instance, where did the civics class go in school? We had civics.
Right.
We were taught history. We went on field trips. We had to go. We had the opportunity to go and touch and actually see history. We got to go and see, our local state's house in session and see how they act and how they perform and how it works. And nowadays that's bad. That's evil. That's gross. That's white supremacy. That's this. That's that. Everything nowadays has this connotation on it, has this name tag hung on it that is just not good. I was reading about this one school that, and I don't have this one school brought their field trip and they went to a gay pride march. I don't have anything against gay people, but if you're going to take the opportunity to take the children somewhere to really and truly teach them something, hell, take them to a zoo, take them to a museum, take them to a library, take them somewhere where they can learn some type of skill that's going to help them later on in life. And they've had to hang a tag on everything. You talk to my son, there is a tag for everything, for the way you dress, for the way you walk, for what you drive. It's ridiculous. It's terrible.
Mad Hatter, what? I haven't seen TV in ages. Why is Charlie Brown racist?
Because well, according to what they're saying is in the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving cartoon, his little black friend sat on the other side of the table, and he sat by himself, and that's why it's racist. Rudolph is now offensive because it makes fun of abnormalities when he goes to the little island of the misfit toys.
They've taken Laura Ingalls off of Little House on the Prairie, off of a must-read list.
Well, they'll go after Mark Twain someday.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, are you kidding me? Huck, can you imagine Huck Finn being read out loud?
Oh, you know, it's a truth.
Brer Rabbit and Brer Bear, Uncle Remus.
Did you? Yeah. When they banned Uncle Remus after it came out, I went, "Are you kidding me? Song of the South? That is the best movie I've ever seen in my whole entire life.
Like the best record to put on when you were a kid."
Would we get strikes for reading that stuff on air?
No idea.
That's a good question.
The old classics. I mean, that's something we could take turns doing at the end of a session, or even a lead into a session, taking some of the old classic stories and reading them. I have a couple around here somewhere.
Briar Rabbit was a teaching experience. It was to teach children. It wasn't to be racist. And Uncle Remus, he was like the kindest man in the world. And to consider people racist because they wanted to watch it was just outrageous to me.
I still use the phrase all the time now. When somebody threatens me with something, I always tell them, please don't throw me in that briar patch.
Right. I never got that. It never clicked to me why they would even consider it a racist movie. And then Disney took it off.
They just look for things. They look for things. I mean, they actively, you've really either got to have this major agenda or no life. And pose a protest over Charlie freaking Brown. I mean, come on.
Okay, Tex, what does that fall under? Let's see, Milu and
it comes under a couple things. It's part of controlling you. It's mind control. Yeah. It's thought reform. It's it's totalitarianism is what we're talking about.
It's also to teach you that all the old ways, if you're a kid nowadays or you're a young adult nowadays, and you've got your parents or grandparents telling you that all of this PC stuff is a bunch of BS, it's also a way of them telling you that all of their stuff is the right way because we respect people and genders and whatever. And because your parents and your grandparents come from these generations that supported these types of shows, the bad people. Could you honestly imagine All in the Family being on TV today?
Oh Lord!
Well,
Leave It to Beaver with the mother at home in her apron cooking and supper on the table when Dad gets home.
That's so stereotyping. Every feminazi would be up in arms.
Yeah, well,
I don't recognize those women as women. They don't look like women.
Where are the feminazis when
what happened to the ladies?
Or acid thrown in her face or maimed? Where are they? They don't say a word. Where are the feminazis? Where are they?
No, they just ruled on genital mutilation up in Minnesota that a judge ruled that it's not unconstitutional. And
in Michigan too.
A fit over that,
And that judge should be tarred and feathered. And if that gets us a strike, I apologize.
And I agree with you. If that's a strike, I apologize too.
Okay,
I wasn't joking when I asked Tex what is that, because there's a clinical criteria for that stuff.
There's actually a psychiatric look at how you do thought reform. If you go back to the Korean War and the prisoners of war who went through thought reform under the when they were POWs, and were spouting that, you know, death to America and communism is great. A gentleman named Dr. Robert Lifton analyzed that and broke it down, and we'll cover it another time. But in fact, we probably should put a bow on this in a second here. But there's actually a system of doing it, and it's being utilized on us. And that's what we're breaking free of. And that's what Trump's really doing, is he's breaking you free of it. And that's what the media is resisting. And that's where it's great that YouTube allows us to come on a format like this, and Zoom allows us to have a chat room where we can talk to people like this and really get it out there that, you know, we understand these things. We're going to step out of that box and not be caught up in it. But let's do this. We've taken a good few hours here and covered a lot of topics. Does anyone have some closing thoughts they want to leave everybody with?
I just want to say, Tex, please hit that like button, hit that bell. It'll let us know, or let you know that we're on the air and we're live, and it's time to tune in, and we'll be back. We hope you enjoyed our show. Also, please join our Discord. And if you have any questions, there'll be a room for you that's going to be set up that you can ask any questions. And I really do appreciate every single one on this panel, and thank you so much.
Yeah, because not only will we be doing live broadcasts, but we'll be uploading videos pertaining to certain subjects as well. So you're always free to peruse our videos that we have out there. We have some really interesting subjects, and we have some really good diggers. And so we're going to have some great content, and we appreciate everybody watching.
Thank you all for joining us, and thank you for having me.
Tex, Tennessee, anything else?
Well, I just want to say thank y'all very much for joining us, and please join us for future shows. We will always have something to talk about. That's one good thing about this group, and we appreciate you being here. Hit like and subscribe, and thank y'all.
And I'd like to close it out with ditto, 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 and we'll have more than our names the next time.
Yes, you certainly will. We're going to have that tech area fixed. But thank you, everybody, and everybody have a wonderful night.